A night out of time. A future out of control. Epic, a sci-fi adventure. Chapter 1. The moon peeked over the edge of a monolith, pouring light between the skyscrapers and high-rises that jabbed at the skyline, illuminating the shadows in the quarter. Up this high, the dull roar of the mob was faint, like the insect hum must have been in summers of years past, until it became part of the ignored background. The noise was buffered by the blast-proof plexi-steel that coated the windows, allowing anyone in the room to look out over the pockmarked buildings etched in the ghost light of night. Nova stared at the scarred cityscape, noting the missing buildings with an absent-minded familiarity, smiling at the similarity to the gaps in the toothy-mouthed man behind her. "Commander, you know what your participation in this will be." "It's only money," she started to say and caught herself. She turned from the window and stalked to the oversized desk that dominated the far end of the large room. "Money we need," the man with a gap-toothed smile and grease-slicked hair shot back at her. He waited for her to sit in the plush vinyl chair and ease back, hoping for a look of comfort, some sign that she understood. "Without them," he continued, "the project faces extinction. You know how this affects your job." "You don't need to remind me," she reminded him. "The troops are my first concern, and the protection of every citizen in the Metroplex is at the top of our agenda every time we suit up. But you're trying to manipulate me, and that pisses me off." She glared at him over the smooth black surface of her desk. He tried to hold her stare, but turned away after a moment, wiping an oily sheen that sprung up on his brow. "Just ask me," she continued. "I prefer the direct approach." "Fine. You need to go to this fundraiser. You need to put on a slinky dress. You need to show a lot of bosom, and be flanked by two of your shiny suits. They want to see the leader of the troops. They want to know who is protecting them, and just how capable she is." She could feel him undressing her with his eyes. "And the way you look in a dress, they'll open up a credit book and give you what we need." She twisted away from him, hiding behind the broad back of her chair. She looked up at the portrait of a wiry, bald man behind her desk. His furrowed brow watched imperiously from the wall, tearing into the soul of each person that stood under it. She wondered for a moment what he would have thought of the whole affair, and checked herself. The founder had to kiss the same butt, schmooze the same credits, only his job of starting the team and nursing it through the formative years could only have been harder. People, taxpayers, voters these days expected the troops to guard the walkways, demanded they pick up where peace officers could not, even if now it was just token decorations, their being out and about. The founder would have put on a dress if necessary, would have slathered on the makeup and lipstick, and laughed, bullied or beat anyone into submission. Humiliate, degrade, demean were just words to Conrad. A method to the means. She could stomach it, possibly even laugh at the ribbing from Team 1, her personal task force. It was only a short period of time. "All right. RSVP me through email. Send me a hover car. I'll put on the dress." "I knew you'd come around," Webster leaned against the desk. "I had an assistant pick out this great little strapless number. I can pick out my own clothes. Just make sure my car is on time." "Not a problem at this juncture. Go." He climbed out of the null-grav chair and walked for the door. The material in his pants whispered each time he took a step. She held in a laugh. "I'll send you more details." She waved him off without turning from the portrait, listening for the click of the door closing. She unfolded herself from the chair and went back to her vigil at the window. "How did we ever come to this?" she asked the painting. She could feel him staring at her back, but he didn't answer. He never did. She leaned an arm against the cold pane and rested her head on it. "You fought for something, at least. Hell, I fought to get this chair, and now look at me, a bureaucrat." She swallowed, trying to clear the bitter taste from her mouth. "Money makes the world go round," said a familiar voice. She turned, drawing her pistol, and realizing in the same instant it was useless. Her wrist went numb from an unseen blow, and the laser slithered across the floor to rest under her desk. She backflipped, trying to get away from her assailant, stopping across the room. "Boo!" he whispered from behind her. She whirled in a round kick, missing his head by inches, following it with a blow to the solar plexus. He caught her hand, twisting it behind her, jerking it up between her shoulder blades. Her muscles screamed in objection. "You're improving." His breath was hot on her neck. He let her go. She stepped away, massaging her arm. "Bram, damn it. I'm not in the mood." "Then why did you attack?" His white teeth gleamed from smooth black skin, the same color as her desk. "Lights," she called to the computer, and the room brightened. "How did you get in here?" "Rumor downstairs is you were meeting with the lizard, and I wanted to make sure he didn't slime you." "Thanks for your concern." She retrieved her pistol. "But if you recall, I can handle it. I am an administrative genius, remember? You have to wear a dress, don't you?" "Shut up." He watched her move behind the desk. She ignored her chair and perched on the edge of the desktop. "Every great general knows that you have to make a few concessions to win a battle." "Whatever you say," he laughed. "Stop laughing. I'm doing it for your paycheck." "You keep telling yourself that." "It's true. Nothing noble, like saving the world or protecting these valuable citizens." She polished her pistol absently with the sleeve of her jumpsuit. "We don't save the world anymore. All we do now is look good and try to stay alive. When was the last time you got one over on the bad guys? And I don't mean the mob. A year. 2. We get our allocations for flashy suits and big pop guns, and we keep their functions from being overrun. When was the last time we were outside after dark?" Bram pushed up on the desk beside her. "You're too young to be a pessimist." She looked at him gratefully. "I want to save the world. I just don't know how." He put his arm around her shoulders. "Relax, boss. Something will turn up." They looked out the window at the moon, half covered with thunderclouds that rolled in from the ocean. The thick membrane that separated them from the streets 30 stories below blocked the wind and smattering of rain, and almost muted the crackle of blaster fire somewhere in the distance. Chapter 2. You're not going to test that tonight. Bruce Martin pushed his grimy lab coat out of the way and hurried after the short man rushing down the hall, head bent in concentration. "Dr. Darwin, I have to insist. The weather outside makes this way too dangerous. Besides, the radios say the mob is getting worse tonight. We really need to make it to the shelters, or at least another building before the storm hits." Darwin either ignored the young man or didn't hear him, so absorbed in his own mind that he continued with a crazed glaze in his bright blue eyes. Bruce grabbed his arm. "Dr. Darwin." Darwin wrapped his slender fingers around the young man's upper arm, steadying him. "Bruce, you are an intelligent man and an average student, but you have little to offer in the way of persuasion. This is science, man. How can anything be more important than that?" The doctor released Bruce and left him against the wall. Bruce rubbed his arm, shaking his head at the strength hidden under the old man's lab coat. He watched him bustle through a reinforced door at the end of the hall. Shaking his head, he followed. Chapter 3. The lab was a maze of copper tubes and electric wires that lead from nowhere and connected seemingly to nothing. Some hummed with power, vibrating slightly. Others glowed red or gold, smoking and sparking whenever lightning crashed across the sky. Bruce dodged in and under the wires, moving to the wall-long table the doctor was hunched over. "I knew science could win you over," Darwin muttered without looking up. Bruce looked at the odd assortment of computer terminals lined up on the desk. Battered old husks housing only central processing units were connected to newer models, several tiny monitors showing individual charts or graphs, while the largest monitor squatted in the middle of the table, dominating them all. Bruce looked along the wall. None of the computers was plugged into an outlet. "Doctor," he asked, "are these connected to the main terminal?" Darwin shook his head, but if it was an answer to his question, Bruce wasn't sure. "Science will answer everything, even if you doubt it. We have the technology to grow tomatoes the size of houses, but we don't utilize it." He moved away from Bruce, examining what looked like random connections in the pipes criss-crossing the room. Science has farmed the oceans and flooded the Great Plains, seeding them for fish. Science has carried us to the Great Age, where a man across the ocean can press a button and send a grocery list to the eastern states, and have an answer in less time than it takes to lick a postage stamp and mail it. Do you remember that? He stopped his fiddling and looked at Bruce. "No, sir, I don't. When I was a boy, my grandmother told me about writing on what was called paper. It was made of wood. I minored in history, Doc. Sounds like a waste to me." "Don't be insolent," Darwin scolded. "Respect your elders. That's another thing we've lost to history. Manners are archaic. Ageism is out of fashion, or haven't you read the studies?" Bruce leaned against the table, working with a disassembled gearbox. "Just because I'm 22 doesn't make me any less smart than you. I'm just as qualified at history or even science. I read your files, your papers. Our test scores were pretty much the same. The only thing you have on me is experience, and that just doesn't cut it today, since most of what you learned is outdated or amended before the next series of learning tapes are out." He ducked to avoid a tube of sealing compound thrown by Darwin. "Insolence. History minor, my gray tuckus. What happened in 2110? Bruce set the gearbox next to a terminal. "I fixed that." He moved beside the doctor, watched him work. 2110. According to the tapes, it was a barbarian's paradise. All the political and religious mania that swept the globe for the end of the millennium culminated in nothing, and a lot of folks were left waiting for a second coming or Armageddon that never happened. So chaos ensued, infrastructures collapsed, and the world descended into the second Dark Ages. It lasted for 200 or so years, until computers were rediscovered and employed to restore the world. Darwin watched him through thin glasses. "No one likes a show-off." Bruce flashed a smile at him. 2110 was a cesspool, Darwin said. "Worse than these so-called Dark Ages." "How can you say that? Except for the mob, we've got it pretty good. I mean, relatively." "Huh?" spat Darwin. "Relatively. Now a man will kill you for a kilo of kelp to feed his family. When was the last time you went outside, after dark? When you were a small boy. Younger." "I don't remember," said Bruce. Darwin ignored him. Then men could farm their own land. Now children go hungry in the street. Men fight for no reason, no sanity. Only the wealthy can afford suits to guard them. Darwin moved under Bruce's face, shaking a finger under his nose. "Relax, Doc, you'll blow a gasket." Darwin took a deep breath and 2 steps back. "I have a program you could try," Bruce offered. "It might take your mind off all this." He waved his arm around the room. Darwin shook his head. "That's the problem, I think. Too many people taking their mind off of it. Off of it all." A shrill siren cut through the room. In the distance, a dull boom resounded. Bruce looked at Darwin with wide eyes. "Great. We missed curfew. Now we're stuck here tonight." The lights in the room dimmed as power was lowered to the building. You know, I could have had a date tonight. Darwin moved to a terminal and keyed in a sequence. The lights flickered, and yellow globes slowly grew brighter in the four corners, casting a soft glow around the room. Your virtual girlfriend will be there tomorrow, I'm sure. You're on an independent power circuit, accused Bruce with a laugh. I bet your terminal's standalone too. He quickly searched under the table and held up a cable. I thought so. Do you know how much trouble you could get in if they found this? They won't find it, Darwin said. He reached down, grabbed the cable, and jerked it from Bruce's hand. What did your history tapes tell you of the Templars? Bruce sulked against the table. I don't want to play this game, Doc. It's bad enough I'm stuck here with you for the whole night. I don't want to make a class of it. I'll tell you then, Darwin smiled quizzically. He picked up the completed gearbox and moved to a metal shelf next to Bruce. It will make my work go faster. What's that? Bruce asked. Darwin lay on the floor and crawled under the shelf. The Templars were around after a series of battles in the 11th century called the Crusades. They disappeared in anonymity for hundreds of years, re-emerging after the economic collapse in 2110. Bruce scooted under the shelf next to Darwin, handing him tools without being told. I know, he said. Did you know they traveled the world, trying to teach man the golden rule? Protecting. Serving. I know Conrad Pound founded the troops on the philosophies of the Templars. Based on that, I don't know how much they practiced the golden rule. Templars were great warriors who disavowed violence in search of peace and tried to teach it. They were strong, proud, and fierce, the culmination of our day's supermen, Darwin said. Bruce noticed a shadow move across the window. You think they can see the light? He asked. Darwin rolled out from under the box and looked at the glass, wiping his greasy hands on his lab coat. Surely not, he motioned to the gearbox attached to the shelf. Do you know what this is? Bruce stood back and examined it a moment. A new servo mech. A dishwasher. Darwin tisk-tisked. You are a very silly young man with no imagination. Why would I be talking to you about history and build a dishwasher? Because you have some neurological disease and are slowly losing your mind, Bruce offered. Darwin moved to the other side of the room and grabbed two cables. He dragged them back to the box, connected them to posts jutting out from either side. You may be right, but I'm crazy to save this world. I have always had a vision that I would do something grand for humanity, but it never told me what. I tried it once and failed. Now, my reading has come to my rescue. Bruce, I give you a time distortion array. Oh, what? Bruce jumped to his feet and stood beside the doctor. A time machine. Observe, Darwin pointed to the pipes overhead. Note the wires entering the room? I've built an accentuation which collects the energy, channeling it into the box you were so kind to put together for me. It allows me to open a window and control it. Bruce backed away from Darwin, reaching for a table for support. Are you all right, Doc? I mean, do I need to go get some help? I'm serious, my boy. I've tested the prototype. That's how I got this Templar history. He rambled over to the desk, Bruce scrambling out of his way as if to avoid a contagion. Darwin picked through the paper and debris that cluttered the top and held out an ancient bound book. Bruce gasped. It's a book, he whispered in awe. Astonishing, said Darwin. He held the book out to Bruce, who backpedaled away from it. If your grasp of the obvious is so astounding, it's no wonder ageism offends you. I retrieved it last month. I've worked day and night since, and expanded the prototype to incorporate something larger. Say, the size of a Templar. Bruce watched the doctor move to a console behind a lead shield and don a pair of black-tinted goggles. You might want to come over here with me, he offered. "It tends to get a little bright." "Does anyone know you're doing this?" Bruce stood outside the shield. "I mean, you know you're crazy. This will never work. You might want to come in here anyway, or the 72 or so rads are going to give you a really intense sunburn." Bruce ducked behind the shield, slipping on the goggles Darwin held out to him. "I don't know how long I can hold it open and steady, but I've pinpointed the location of a battle, and I will try to extract a warrior from that." "I thought the Templars were pacifists," said Bruce, trying to forestall the experiment. "In theory, yes. But the path to enlightenment is never easy, according to their history. A village rose up against them and massacred a whole contingent of Templars. So the one I take will not be missed, nor will it affect the outcome of time, since he would cease that day anyway." "And this is all theory," said Bruce. Darwin nodded. "If I start to lose the field, I'll have to let it collapse. If that happens, duck behind the shield and cover your ears. The sonic boom will hurt." "Are you sure you should be doing this? I mean, what would the main terminal think? Didn't you take some sort of oath when they gave you your doctorate?" "I'm a PhD, not an MD. All I had to do was write a paper or two and use my mind. Besides, this is for the benefit of mankind. Just how much more noble can that be? And if it fails, no one suffers and no one's the wiser. You must really learn to be more optimistic. I find it depressing." "Right. Are we ready?" "Not really." "Good. Hang on." Darwin connected a switch on the board in front of him, twisting the dial. A video display terminal started spitting out equations on a screen. The doctor checked the sequence once, pressed a key, and they raced across the monitor in an indeterminable order. The hum in the room grew louder, sparks arcing from one wire to the next and showering on the floor. Bruce screamed. Darwin touched a final button, and the box started dancing around the room. Air shrieked like 1,000 howling babies, as a hole in the fabric of time was ripped in place. Darwin stared through the shimmering pane, watching a battle as if it were a vid screen. He selected a warrior near the top of a knoll, surrounded by villagers attacking him. He was alone, his companions strewn up the hillside and trampled under the advancing and overwhelming numbers of the lesser-armed peasants. The warrior lay about him with a mighty sword he wielded with skill and grace. 2 empty holsters on each hip were testament to how many villagers he was carrying to another life with him. A smoldering plasma rifle lay at his feet among the piled bodies. The warrior scooped up the rifle like a club, screamed a challenge, or perhaps a prayer to a barbarian god, and leapt from the pile of bodies into the advancing horde. Darwin swooped the whole onto his flying form, shouting as it crashed through the time barrier. The warrior landed on the floor, still screaming his battle cry. Bruce and Darwin looked at each other. A second later, the whole collapsed, engulfing the room in a heart-shattering explosion. Protected by the lead shield, Darwin's last thought was how much bigger the Templars seemed in person. Chapter 4. Darwin woke to the acrid stench of smoke and soot, the cold, oily taste of a blaster barrel in his mouth. "Speak, demon." The Templar's voice was rough, torn from screaming a battle cry at the approaching mob. Blood dripped from welts, nicks, and bare misses, dropping onto the wrinkled white lab coat. "Now," the voice commanded. Darwin tried to clear his throat, speak around the barrel. Stall for time, his mind raced as he tried to gather his thoughts. He needn't have bothered. Bruce screamed, fear and mania adding new dimensions to the shrieks he was able to produce. He bolted for the door. The Templar moved like coiled lightning. He lifted the gun barrel, tracked and shot. But the charge was empty, the shell no more than a small, disappointing projectile that barely made it across the room. Bruce reached the lab door, fumbled the catch, forgetting the mob, the curfew that trapped them inside. The only thought in his stricken mind was primeval, pure instinct. Fight or flight, and fighting was not an option. The Templar threw the gun at his head, and chance made Bruce move in time. The muzzle sank into the plasteel door. Bruce screamed again and jerked it open. "Bruce!" "No." Darwin called after him, but all he could hear was faintly retreating footsteps. He shoved at the Templar's massive thigh, holding him to the ground. It didn't budge. "We have to stop him," he tried to explain. "Where have you brought me, demon?" The Templar seemed of a mind to strangle the doctor, one way or another. Fingers tightened around his throat. Bruce's scream was different this time. He ran back into the room and tried to shut the door. "They're after me." The mob hit the door before he could close it. Their weight was too much, their momentum too strong. Bruce sailed across the room, landing on the far wall with a dull thunk. The Templar leapt off Darwin, facing the door and the new menace that growled and grumbled in front of him. "Stop them." Darwin mustered all the authority he could think of. The command triggered something deep in the Templar, training ingrained in the psyche. He had no flight response in his reasoning. He only knew fight. Ripping a small test tube bar from the table with one hand, and waving his mighty sword, he leapt into the crowd. The mob's collective conscience didn't know what to make of him. Their existence was dependent on numbing fear. Actions played out while prey lay paralyzed in inaction. The crowd was never the same on any given night. Members came and left, as hunger or death drove them or dragged them down. The mob moved about with nothing better to do, no greater purpose than to feed off the leftovers. No one had bothered to challenge them in years, because challenging required too much energy, too many resources. The mob claimed the night. No one could steal that from them. The Templar did not know about the mob or what drove them, or what anyone else's perception of them was. All he knew was the boiling blood under his skin, crying for battle, the arrogant assurance that he was a match for any man or beast he came across. He did not know fear. It was never taught to him. He jumped at the first comers pouring through the door, and noted that the small aperture would allow easy defense. No more than 3 or 4 people could fit through at one time. They came at him hesitantly, unsure. He turned that to his advantage, striking with sword and pipe, laying waste until the bodies piled up to his waist, becoming an effective fortress. Darwin crawled under the table to Bruce, dragging him to safety. He hit an emergency button and watched the Templar. The mob reacted with fear, then anger, then determination to kill at all costs. They flowed over him like waves on a beach. But they were unable to best him, unable to find an advantage on this giant figure of a man in his torn armor and blood-soaked visage that grinned at them with a rigor mortis smile. Their numbers decimated, their courage fled. The mob turned and slowly leaked back into the hallway. The Templar clawed over the bodies and followed them, seeking out the fleeing forms and bashing them with the pipe. Darwin continued to stare from under the table, hoping in the back of his mind that other members of the research facility had either gone home or been able to lock themselves in tight before the mob arrived. He stared over the corpses strewn in the doorway, watched the figure of the Templar hunting in the hall. "Isn't he magnificent?" Bruce couldn't talk. His outrage was evident in every move. He crawled to the door, kicking the bodies out of the way with his feet, and shut it closed, double-bolting it. "Are you crazy, old man?" he screamed. "How could you bring that on us?" He ripped the black paper covering the glass pane in the door and peeked out at the Templar. "He'll kill us. He'll kill us all." "Or save us," Darwin offered. "You're crazy." "A point you've already suggested. Now please stand away from the door." Bruce accessed an emergency panel hidden in the wall. "Did you call the troops?" he asked, hitting a big red button over and over. If any troops were available, they would come to clear out the mob. "Don't do that," Darwin tried to move on Bruce, but the young man hit a second button twice before his hand was batted away. Green gas jetted from hidden recesses in the ceiling in the hall. They watched as the remaining members of the mob succumbed to sleep. "I'll just knock him out, Doc. But when the troops get here, you should kill him. He doesn't belong here. Did you see what he did?" Bruce motioned to the throng of bodies both inside and outside the door. "He saved our lives from your stupidity. If you hadn't opened the outer door, he would have killed us instead. Better to die at the mob than be ripped to shreds by him. Is that why you came running back?" Bruce was about to say something, but the Templar leaned against the glass pane, searching the room with glazed eyes. He beat against the door, shaking it in the frame. "He'll never make it through." "Nighty-night," Bruce waved. The door cracked and fell open. Bruce and Darwin backed away from the gas washing into the room. "He cracked Pla steel," Darwin gasped, feeling sleep steal over his frame. He kneeled on the floor. "Magnificent." Bruce pitched headfirst across a table and slid down. The Templar stumbled to Darwin, crashing beside him. He landed on one shoulder and watched for a moment before closing his eyes. 5 minutes in insta-gas, thought Darwin as his limbs went numb and his brain slowed. And he's so darn big. Chapter 5. There are 52 dead bodies in that hallway, and you're trying to tell me one man did it all. Harry Gargan was a 10-year member of the troops, a seasoned veteran of numerous street encounters, and part of an elite circle totally devoted to Novalod. You know how many times we went up against the mob. So many I can't count. But I know damn well that no matter how big this fella is, he didn't kill them by himself. No, sir. Darwin listened to the officer with patience. It was no more than he expected. Not many people were willing to believe these days, not even in atrocities. He sucked on an oxygen tube and handed it back to the medic. "Thank you." The Templar leaned against a wall, glowing energy bonds wrapped around his torso and arms. He didn't say a word, claiming credit or denying. He listened with that same self-assured air he had during battle. Darwin felt sorry for him, and a little scared. For all he knows, he's a prisoner of war, he thought. Aloud, he said, "I realize what a stretch this must be for you, officer, and I assure you that as soon as my assistant wakes up, he will verify every word." Harry looked at him skeptically. Bruce had a concussion from hitting the floor. He wouldn't wake up for a while. "Meanwhile, if we could feed him while we wait," Darwin pointed to the Templar. "It's been 12 hours since I supped, and probably longer for him. Are you hungry?" The Templar refused to answer, but his stomach held no such conviction. It roared. Not a tiny growl or a churning gurgle, but a small lion's roar that brought everyone in the room about. Darwin laughed, and the Templar smiled at him. Harry interrupted. "Wait a minute, I want to know what went on here." "I told you. But you want to wait for proof. If you don't want to believe me, that's fine, but I have no reason to lie." "I'm not calling you a liar," Harry told the doctor. Darwin moved to his desk drawer and dug out a banana. He walked to the Templar and peeled the skin. "I grew this myself in a greenhouse. It's the only way to get real fruit anymore. I can't stomach the synthetics." He waved the morsel in front of the Templar. "Will you eat?" The Templar sniffed the fruit, then shrugging, he leaned forward and took almost all with one bite. "Watch your fingers, Doc," said Harry. Darwin examined his hand just to be sure. "It's all I have for now, I'm afraid," he explained to the Templar. Harry walked up beside him. "Tell me who he is again." Darwin reached across the table for a cracked, worn notebook and flipped reverently through the pages. His eyes were filled with an obsessive gleam that comes from love that burns too long and deep, until its all-consuming passion claimed the life of the man, bidding him to create the machine to make real his obsession. He is a noble creature, born in the last Dark Ages after the economic collapse and before the first computer war. He is a Templar knight, an order founded to care for the weak with compassion and mercy, to hold honor above all else, to protect and serve. Some compassion, Harry nodded toward the piled bodies. Darwin ignored him. This magnificent man you see tied before you, like some common criminal, is of an age where our entire way of life was in its infancy. Learned men hid and nursed their secret hopes of rebuilding, dreaming of a day when they would be strong again. And in the interim, this man and others like him walked the earth in search of those needing protection. Conrad founded the troops on their philosophy, emulating what he saw as the perfect model. "Doctor," interrupted Harry, "you still haven't told me where he comes from." "I brought him here." "But you said you didn't know him." "I don't know him. I know of him. It's all in my journals." The vid-quarters caught everything. He pointed to the recessed cameras hidden in the walls. "Review the tapes to verify my story. I made a time portal. I pulled him from battle." His mind was ravaged by the travel, his instinct geared for destruction. Adrenaline raced in his blood. Harry had a blank look on his face. He was in a fight, and when he arrived, fight was all he knew. He was attacked, and my assistant brought these cattle in for slaughter. They attacked the Templar, and he responded in the only way he knew how. Harry nodded, as if he finally understood something. "But 50 men. Come on, Darwin. Don't tell me you didn't take a pot shot or two. We all want to do it sometimes. Just kill some poor bastard that no one will miss, blame the mess on someone else, take out some of your rage. You sure you didn't want a little revenge?" Darwin was wary. He backed away from Harry, holding the frazzled notebook between them like a talisman. "Officer, I believe that could be construed as entrapment, and I'll have no part of it. Search my office, you will find I have no weapons. Search the corpses, you will find no blaster shots." Harry looked incredulous. "You're telling me your man there killed 52 people without a blaster?" Darwin nodded. "He is responsible for the mayhem, but cannot be held accountable. He is not part of the rule process that governs your or my actions. He is of a different world." Harry shook his head. "You're not making much sense. I can't understand what you're saying, but he's going to have to come with me. We'll put him in detention until we pull some answers off your vids." "I understand, but could he not stay with me? I promise he will do no harm while in my care." Harry pointed at the hallway. "I suppose that was no harm." "That was justifiable. Look how calm he is now that the battle rage has left him." It was true. The Templar leaned against the wall, head lolled to one side, eyes half closed. His body was coiled at an impossible angle, legs tucked underneath him like a spring, and Darwin surmised that is exactly how they were positioned. "I can't chance it," Harry said, reaching for the Templar. "He'll have to come with us." He grabbed a power cord around the captive's torso, pulling him up. "Hey man, wake up." The Templar was waiting for this, and exploded. As Harry pulled, he leapt, adding his momentum to flip the unsuspecting trooper around and slammed him on his back. A well-placed kick to the head knocked Harry unconscious. "Oh dear," said Darwin. "Guards." The Templar turned to him. "Untie me." "I can't do that, I'm afraid. I cannot pinpoint your actions, and my hypotheses are all wrong. Untie me now." The guards were pounding up the hallway, footsteps echoing in the closed room. Darwin reached out tentatively with one hand and shut off the power pack to the energy bonds. They fizzled out, and the Templar stretched his massive frame. How do I get out? Darwin pointed to the door. The only way is the hall, but I can assure you, you will be safe with me. I only want to talk, make you understand what is happening. I don't know where the hell I am, or how I got here, but I'm not staying. Got it. He shoved Darwin against the wall, knocking his glasses off his nose. But you were supposed to be kind, gentle. The Templar ignored him. He crouched low as the two troopers made the lab and tackled them, smashing them to the floor. He took their pistols off their suits and eyed the material with curiosity. Harry stirred, and the Templar bolted like a deer. Darwin heard him run through the hall, felt the door vibrate under heavy thuds. It fell from its hinges and crashed to the ground. Oh dear, he worried. Isn't he magnificent? Chapter 6. He did what? Is Harry all right? Nova Lod paced the vast floor in her office. Where did he go? Then double the watch, find him. She tossed the cell phone into her chair, frustration creasing a small line between her eyebrows. Conrad's portrait stared at her, relentless and demanding. She took a deep breath, forcing a calming technique into her tired muscles. Bram appeared from nowhere, working strong hands over her shoulders and neck. That's right, he whispered, using the voice they were all taught, slow and measured. Begin with the end, and work your way in. She smiled, and patted his hands, moving away to stare over the brightly lit cityscape. You know who that was? I don't have ESP, he answered. Could have fooled the rest of us, she smiled at him over her shoulder. That was Dispatch. Harry got busted up at the Academy Research Lab. She could read the disbelief in his face. Did he have a suit on? Wasn't powered up, she said. Mob. She shook her head. They're saying it was one guy, but he took out 3 troopers. Impossible. Know who the lab belongs to? He stared at her. She made him wait for a moment. Darwin. What does he have to say about it? He said the guy was a Templar knight, transported through time. His assistant confirms, but we're running a battery of polygraphs through the main terminal. What does it say about all this? Claims it was not aware of the possibility of time travel. Doesn't compute. For me either, Bram agreed. I should go look at it. She moved to her desk and fitted a sleek holster over her shoulder. I was thinking the same thing. Bram eyed her. He smiled. You sure the fundraisers want you risking your pretties if things get rough? She stepped up to face him. I can handle it. He swung a fist at her head. She sidestepped it. Besides, you'll back me up. Stay on your toes, he warned her. Sun won't be up for a while, and the mob's still out there. They don't care who they come after. It'll be light in an hour or so, she rubbed her tired eyes. We don't find anything quick. I'm going to come home and get some sleep. Chapter 7. He knew he wasn't home by the smell of things. Not just away from home, like going 2 or 3 villages over, or even traveling the wastes of the interior from one half-starved settlement to another. He wasn't on his own planet. Nothing could compare to the tumultuous chaos he met on the streets. Not the screams of dying children caught in a fire, not the wails of mothers watching, or the shrieks of men cleaved in two. This was noise, and it assaulted him, knocking him first one way, then the other, until all sense of up, down, right, wrong was beyond him. Here, buildings hummed with energy fields he didn't understand, growling like crouched animals. They bit him when he leaned against their glossy green transparencies. There, an armored monorail, that he could not name or recognize, zipped through the sky, suspended on needle-thin slivers of steel. Auto hulks lumbered through the streets, slowly forcing the crowds to part and flow back on the empty space like water once they had passed. He tried to breathe deep, but the noxious stench of unwashed human bodies nearly knocked him out. He couldn't stand up. And then they were upon him, pressing, pawing, pulling at him. Worse than the noise, they were a faceless mass of hands tugging at his torn armor, dragging him further and further into the midst of their movement as they surged aimlessly. Battle rage burned in him. He fought. No weapons were at hand, so he made them. He tore a leather strap from someone's shoulder and lay about with it like a whip, beating the mass back. It was a momentary reprieve. They came back again and again, wave after wave threatening to overtake him. He screamed and grabbed the first body, breaking it over his head. And then the red mist fell over his eyes, painting the lurid landscape in blood as he filled in the numbers. He moved on top of the mob and under them and in between, leaving a path of twisted corpses, broken, bleeding, unrecognizable. They disappeared quickly, gone to some unknown place that even the darkest soul among them would never admit to. He rested against the side of an energy field, ignoring the jolt it sent into him. He could barely draw a breath, and the mob was untried, their numbers seemingly endless. Fight had been purged from him, numbness claiming his tattered senses. He had been in a running battle for almost 2 days before the portal brought him to this new time. He had been fighting since his arrival. Exhaustion claimed him, and he was not afraid. He had given a good battle. And like the first picture of him the good doctor glimpsed through the time hole, he climbed on top of a pile of bodies and roared at the crowd, daring them. Come on. Chapter 8. Darwin knew the time had come. He prepared his notes, detailing each entry with the chronicles of his adventure into the unknown. He reread over and over the preparations he underwent to build the machine and the process of opening the portal. He searched and watched the vid copies, ransacked his ravaged office for any audio sources that may have captured a trace of information about the events. He gathered it all and stacked it neatly in a steel-reinforced concrete vault. He twisted a small silver dial set in the door and locked the knowledge behind a complex combination of algorithms. Satisfied, he sat down to a cup of coffee in front of a trooper scanner and waited for his Templar. Chapter 9. Nova's hover car flew 5 meters above the pocked ploskreet surface of the street. 2 gunners on air bikes rode escort, flanking her rear, and 2 other troopers filled her back seat. With suits on, the fit was tight, the 4 of them jammed in with recon gear. Bram sat beside her, gripping the handrail with white knuckles. I can fly great, she offered. He smiled at her, stretching the corners of his mouth so wide she knew not to believe him. You think you can do better? She asked. I can. Darren's voice floated up to them from the darkness of the back. Who asked you? She snapped. Bram laughed out loud, real this time. It just makes us nervous to be out in the dark, he said. We don't make regular patrols now. We have to be out, or we wouldn't do it at all. She gripped the yoke with 2 hands, hoping this would ease their minds some. A leader has to inspire confidence, she told herself. Even if it is a running joke about the way you fly. Who is this guy? Darren asked. Bram wanted to give them stats. Nova concentrated on the air in front of them. The car should be safe, but it was hard to tell when the mob might decide to snare a prize and pick it apart. That's what made fighting the mob so hard they had to give it up. With most enemies, you could predict actions. With the mob, even what little that was predictable became unexpected within moments. A disadvantage of having several thousand individual brains working against you. Nova always nursed the private thought that if the mob could be turned into a cohesive unit, functioning toward a common goal for good, they would be unstoppable. As it stood, her elite trained troops were able to fend off advances and bodyguard the rich with relative ease, so long as they kept the numbers. If the mob ever attacked in force, she let that thread run out and listened to Bram. Harry Gargan sent in a report from the hospital. He said his suit was powered down when he went to a disturbance at the research center. Powered down at night, Darren smirked. Not likely. Bram continued, ignoring him. The mob was giving this place wide berth when he got there. He said Dr. Darwin claims one man killed 50 or so individuals, trashed Harry and his team, and moved into the streets. How are we supposed to find him? Robe was the newest recruit for the troops, handpicked for this team to be groomed by Nova and Bram. A small bell binged in the computer. Files done, said Nova. Look at the vids, Bram told them. The Templar's massive frame filled the screen, fighting the mob as it surged into the lab. Wow, whispered Robe. You got that right, Darren said. So he did do it all by himself. If you believe your eyes. They watched until the man was caught in the hall and busted in the door. He can do that to Ploss Steel? Robe looked worried. How are we going to stop him? Nova answered. We're not. We're going to talk to him, reason him into submission. If what the doctor told us is true, and this man is a time traveler, he's scared and confused. We won't afford him time to adjust. If he'll let us, gulped Robe. Don't talk like that, shot back Darren. He's right, Nova tried to bolster their courage. Be positive. Remember your mantra. Instantly, the men fell into a pre-battle trance, searching inward for strength and peace that would keep their heads straight in the upcoming fight. It was part of a strict regimen taught to all the troop recruits and had worked wonders for years. All things began with belief in oneself and team. Everything else just worked after that. How are we going to find him? Asked Robe again, looking serene and confident. We got a signature on his vitals before he left the lab. We'll pinpoint him and drop in. Bram watched them from the corner of his eyes. He's not like the rest of the cattle. If the vids are true, this one's a warrior. Our suits won't put the scare in him like they do them. He won't be expecting the suits, said Nova. They'll absorb the punishment he'll deal, and then we'll take him in. Best laid plans, Bram said quietly. What? She asked. The dash beeped again, a steady pulsing throb. We found him. She eased the car into a dive. An old saying was all he would answer. Chapter 10. Would you look at that? Robe couldn't hide the awe in his voice. The others agreed. What looked like hundreds of bodies were piled into a mound. On top was the Templar, swinging at the shattered remains of what once was a mob assault. Mangled bodies littered the roadway, and even as Nova watched, he grabbed up a man and twisted his life away. He threw the dead weight at another, knocking him backwards in a snap she could almost feel. She shook herself out of it. He's just a man, she reminded them. Let's go. She popped the hydraulics on the cockpit, and the canopy flipped back. They donned their helmets, sealing off the world with a hiss. Systems checks took seconds, and an all-clear green light lit up the visor. Gunner 1, hold cover. Gunner 2, follow us in, she commanded. She didn't wait for assent. All troopers were taught to follow orders. She leaped over the side of the car, hitting the retro rockets in her boots and landing softly at the base of the pile of bodies. The Templar watched with glazed bloodshot eyes, trying to assess this new threat. His breath came in quick, ragged pants, blood dripping from scratches and gouges. She surmised that most of it was not his. Bram, Robe, and Darren settled in behind her. She clicked the loudspeaker on her intercom. Night. We do not want to fight you. We want to take you to rest. Her internal speaker picked up Darren's transmission. Watch him, he's a big one. The Templar shook his head, as if he was waking up. He stared around at the mayhem surrounding him. Come with us, urged Nova. He took a step toward them and pitched forward, sliding down the jumbled mass to land roughly at their feet. Bram and Robe took position on him, holding their energy rifles at ready. Is he alive? Asked Robe. Nova ran vitals on him. He was breathing, his heart rate too fast but within range. Adrenaline registers were off the charts. She had to recalibrate to read it. He passed out. He's been running on nothing for a while, it looks like. Darren glared at the bodies around them, the mob starting to gather at the edge of the shadows. Doesn't look like nothing. Bram took over, slinging the thick body across his back. He sagged under the weight. We better get out of here. Nova heard the rumbling growl of the mob and agreed. As one, the four suits leapt into the air and settled in the car. Where the hell are we going to put him? Darren laughed as they stuffed themselves into the back seat. Chapter 11. Fuzzy memories knocked about the cracks at the edge of his periphery, tugging him toward pain and consciousness. The lab, the mob, the streets, the fight all swirled in and about in his mind. He couldn't tell real from past, and tried to lash out at the thoughts that fought him. He couldn't move. Arms and legs wouldn't respond, but it didn't matter since the memories could not hit. He remembered looking up, a glance lasting only a second, enough to register the four flying figures in full armor, a coat of arms he had never seen, a style of protection he had never known or battled with. They were floating down not far from him, but the mob was here. He tended to them, wiping away the last of the attackers. So long as the new creatures didn't threaten, he wouldn't kill them. Now he was among them, tired weighing on him like some live creature, pressing the breath from his body and holding him down, cluttering up his normally clear mind. He tried to speak, his tongue huge in his mouth. I think he's awake. Sounds but no words. He massaged his tongue against his teeth and gums, spreading moisture around the dry sandpaper feel of his mouth, and tried again. Who are you? A young man next to him leaned over and smirked. That'd be a better question for you to answer. A dangerous-looking man in the front turned around. Want to tell us about you? The Templar gauged his captors, sizing them up, but the armor they wore made it almost impossible. Only their eyes and the lines on their faces told him stories he could read. The rest was obscured by the smooth lines of a material he didn't recognize. The black man in the front seat tugged at the energy bonds around his chest. I'm Bram. What do people call you? The Templar was quiet. He had to have more information, more facts before he could go on. To fight was useless if you did not know who or what you fought. He could not know these enemies yet, so he had to wait, evaluate them. He watched Bram. He won't talk, a woman said from the front. The other man crammed next to him leaned over, shoving him into robe. Sure he will. Just ask him again, said Darren. He pulled a small plasma gun from somewhere and shoved it into the Templar's neck. Finally, an object he knew, a threat perceived. It wasn't a model he was familiar with, but a threat nonetheless. A pistol retained its main purpose, no matter the shape or size. It fires, that is what it is made for. The Templar thought about this as he stretched against his energy bonds. He's trying to get free, squealed Robe. He can't break the bonds, said Bram. Robe wasn't so sure. Their captive was red, almost purple with effort, and the color of the energy bonds had shifted from green to yellow. Darren still pressed the pistol into his neck, but the man didn't seem concerned with it. He wasn't. Every thought and level of energy was focused on stretching the bonds, flexing the muscles in his chest and arms against the restraints, until the battery packs whined with the strain. He's gonna do it, shouted Robe. The bonds popped, shattering the cockpit with a small sonic boom. Robe tried to subdue him, but a quick elbow to the sternum on his suit left him gasping. Darren tried to jerk the pistol out of reach. The Templar grabbed it, aimed it at his head and pulled the trigger. The charge was empty. Darren threw a punch. The Templar caught it. Bones cracked. The trooper screamed. Bram drew his pistol, leveled it at the Templar. My charge is full, he smiled. The Templar watched for a millisecond and grabbed the gun. Robe and Darren stopped gasping to stare. He took. Oh no, finished Darren. Bram started over the seat, his moment of shock replaced with anger. No one had ever been faster than him. And he was the only one who could send a punch through a suit and make someone feel it. The Templar jammed the gun in Bram's mouth. Sit. He tightened his finger on the trigger. Darren shifted in his seat. The Templar threw a punch to the side of his head that knocked him out. Robe stared with wide eyes, words lost. The Templar yelled at Nova. Open this. He pounded on the plexi-steel canopy. We're too high, she said. Take us low, he growled. She threw the car into a steep dive, hoping to knock him off guard, give Bram a chance to recover his gun. But he leaned like a cat, taking all she could dish out and looking ready for more. Open this now. They were still 100 feet off the ground, whizzing between high rises. She hit the hydraulics and the canopy slid backwards. Leave me alone, the Templar warned them. He stood in the seat, testing his legs to make sure they had recovered from the energy bonds. You can't jump, yelled Nova. It's too high. You'll be killed. Let him, groused Bram. If he lives, I'll kill him later. Shut up, Bram. Let me go lower, she shouted. The Templar leapt from the hover car and darted down. Where is he? Find him. Find him, said Nova. There, pointed Robe. She hauled the car around and hovered in front of the Templar. He was hanging on a thin communication cable that connected two buildings. That won't hold him, said Bram, just as the wire snapped and the Templar fell. He caught himself on another wire, using the two to distribute his weight. It looked like they would hold for a little while. Have you ever seen anything like that before in your life? Robe was awed. Nova had to agree. He moves like a cat. Bram didn't seem to enjoy it. He was trained like that. Anyone could do it with the right training. Don't sound jealous, chided Nova. I am. I wish I could move like that. I wish he would teach me. It'd make it easier when it comes time for him to die. He's not going to die, she said. The cables holding him snapped again, but he held onto one and slammed into the side of the building. At least not by you, she amended. She positioned the car facing the Templar and fired a grappling hook into the wall just below him. She called over the loudspeaker. Grab the cable. We'll haul you in. He stared at her across the distance, locking eyes. He's not going to grab it, she whispered. He let go and fell 40 feet into a pile of refuse below. That had to hurt, said Bram. Go find him, yelled Robe. Nova reminded him of his place. Who are you addressing, trooper? Sorry, sir. Check your teammate and control your patience. Yes, sir. But she was as anxious as the rookie and hoped it didn't show in her voice. She dropped the car down on the garbage pile. Darren's fine. Just unconscious, reported Robe. Good, she instructed. You and Bram flank the pile, flush him out. Do not engage if he comes at you. Understand? She looked at her second-in-command and closest friend, forcing him to answer. Yes, sir. The instructions were pointless. They moved over the refuse pile and found the Templar on the edge, blood seeping from a large wound in his head. He's alive, Robe said, checking his vitals. But he's going to have a monster headache. Put him in the car, Nova ordered. Let's get him back before he wakes up. They crammed him into the back seat again. And this time, keep a gun on him, she said. Chapter 12. Slowly, his senses came back. A tiny light at the edge of vision, a tingle in the tips of his fingers, a numb, dull ache at his wrists and ankles. He did not move, gave no indication of his heightened awareness. Instead, he absorbed his surroundings, taking in the sounds and smell and feel of the place. It was clean. The slightly pungent antiseptic used to wash down the walls left a lingering odor. It was big. His breath echoed in a cavernous room. Sounds of far-off people filtered through the thick walls. And it was strange, a part of this new world he had been thrust into and now had to cope with. It was new and familiar at the same time, its strangeness in no way hiding the fact that he was imprisoned. The energy bonds had doubled in strength, stretching his arms and legs in a cross-eagle fashion, pinning him against a wall. He tested them, clenching his muscles and tensing, but each time he pulled, a green light intensified, and the hum grew louder, compensating for the added stress. He opened his eyes. She stood in front of him. "I knew you were awake," she said. He recognized her voice from the hover car, the way she held herself. The bulky suit of armor was gone, replaced by a tight bodysuit that emphasized her athletic prowess. His appreciation was evident, and Nova felt uncomfortable. When her confidence ebbed, she responded defensively, hiding behind arrogance. "The vitals told us when you awoke. You've been," she searched for the right word, "watching us." "You're not the one trussed up," he growled, pulling harder at the energy bonds. "It speaks. The doctor has been at my door all day inquiring about you, telling us what he knows. Do you know where you are?" "Not home," he spat at her. "How did you break the energy bonds in the car?" She changed the subject. "You tied me up." He strained against the restraints. The hum trilled up to a whine. "I had to get free." "Fight." She looked nervously over her shoulder. A minor technician, at the computer board, typed furiously on a hidden keypad. He gave her a thumbs up. "We were just trying to ask you some questions, get you off the street for your safety." He glowered at her. "You came at me in a fight. You were armed. Do you know who we are?" "Don't care." She stepped closer to him, within kicking distance if he got free, but she wasn't worried about that. The energy bonds were on the highest setting, and the technician assured her they would hold this time. And if not, she had her reflexes. "Please don't fight us. We won't hurt you." He leaned his head out as far as it would go, and sniffed her, drawing her scent deep in his lungs. It was warm and spicy, like mulled apples and cinnamon. The wine eased off as he released pressure on the shackles. "Where am I?" he asked slowly. "This is troop headquarters. You're in a detention cell." "No," he shook his head. "Where?" It was his turn to search. "Where am I on my land?" She didn't understand the question. She searched his face to find his angle, to comprehend how this would affect their negotiations. Then it dawned on her. He had no idea what really happened to him. "Do you know how you got here?" "Sorcery. Witchcraft." "And do you know where you are?" she repeated. "Not home." She leaned closer. "You're still in your land. As far as I understand, you're from the past. This is the future." He shook his head. "Can't be. World was coming to an end. This has to be hell." "What?" He looked at the bonds holding him, as if to will them off. The shrill whine edged up a notch or two as he stretched. A nervous technician cleared his throat. "I was on a hill, fighting the village. They wiped out my platoon. My second bought it before me, fell across my leg and dropped a plasma rifle in their paws. I was done for. Next thing I know, I'm here with that doctor. And here, I got to fight all kinds of hell. That crowd kept coming from nowhere, and then your kind." "We didn't attack you," she said. "You came at me in a fight," he spoke slowly, as if to a small child. "You had weapons I didn't understand. In an unfamiliar situation, attack first, learn later." She laughed. You sound like someone I know. It's a smart idea. He smiled back at her. She felt something in her stomach, a quickening of the pulse, a nervous twitter, butterflies. She quelched it. This was a prisoner, or if not a captive, at least an unknown commodity. She would not let herself care for him. If I let you out of your bonds, will you attack me? Will you agree to listen? She asked. She had no reason to trust him. By all rights, she should have been scared of him, even bound as he was. He had demonstrated the ability to rip apart energy bonds and fight against impossible numbers. If he chose to kill her, she could fight him, but probably not to win, or even to hold him off without her suit. She toyed with the notion of suiting up, but tossed it aside. He could penetrate those defenses easily enough, if he chose. He was an enigma, stronger than any man she had ever met, had ever heard of. He was more seasoned than her oldest veteran, raw, powerful, faster than her greatest teacher. He reeked of being a warrior. But she had that feeling in her stomach. And if the doctor spoke true, he was a Templar knight, the model on which the troops were founded. She had to gain his trust. Letting him go might be a start. He nodded. She waved to the technician. He didn't move. Are you sure? He whispered. Do it, she commanded. The tech keyed in a sequence. She noted the Templar watching him closely. The bonds faded from green to yellow to transparent. She held her breath. He rubbed his arms and legs, stretching like a cat, and curled up on the floor with his back against the wall. Days of fighting, lack of food and rest had drained him. Passing out from shock and pain was one thing. Sleeping was another. His body told him what it needed. Time to recover, time to knit and heal. He had pushed it beyond any measure of endurance, asked it again and again for more, and each time it responded as he knew it would. It was time to reward the body. It craved sleep. With a knowing wink at Nova, the Templar showed her that trust was a two-way street. He listened to his body and closed his eyes. She couldn't believe he fell asleep. Chapter 13. Harry slowly crept in the room and stood by the door, waiting for his eyes to adjust to the dimness. He almost called for the computer to bring up lights, but didn't want his prey to have the advantage. He had an itch in his throat and silently cursed the filters. They were supposed to clean all microbes and dust particles out of the air, but in this section of the tower, obviously they had gone lax. It made him want to cough, and that mistake could cost him his life. Eyes adjusted, he moved forward, balancing his weight on the balls of his feet, silently padding to where the captive slept against the wall. Pain lingered around his wounds, a throb even the medical computers couldn't care for. He would be completely healed in a few days, physically. Only a quick beating could soothe his pride. Harry was an old-timer in the troops, seasoned soldier and pretentious to boot. He prided himself on keeping a cool head in all battle situations, something the younger rookies looked up to and admired. He relied on reputation mostly now, and the extra strength given to him by his suit. His body betrayed him as he grew older. He treated himself right, avoided fights if he could, but his reputation as a soldier had to be maintained at all costs. Once he had been in a tavern on the islands alone. The troops had been sent to quiet a demonstration. After the quick dismissal of the protesters, Harry found a dingy hovel near the edge of town. It reminded him of the outskirts where he grew up. He moved in for a drink. A few of the demonstrators wandered in off the street to nurse their wounds and pride. Harry felt obligated to remind them of their beating at the hands of the troopers. They laughed and agreed, buying him drink after drink of the potent local fermented beverage. He passed out. He came to behind the hut, the 3 demonstrators ripping at his suit, kicking him, beating. The armor absorbed a lot of punishment, and his youthful demeanor probably protected him too. Without a helmet, his head took the brunt of the damage. He fell into the muck of the alley and passed out again. Hours later, he woke, head throbbing. He would have to live with it. The closest medical computer was at the temporary base, and he had a job to do before he could go back. He climbed up the wall, propping against it until his vision stopped swimming. He stumbled back into the bar. He had to help the bartender remember him, but after dislocating the man's shoulder, he gave Harry addresses, last names, friends, and relatives of the 3 assailants. He visited them one at a time that night, taking a few short minutes to talk to each while they slept. One of the kids died on accident. There was a call for inquiry by the island authorities with a request for Harry to be removed from the troops. But a young 3rd commander, Nova Laud, had fought beside him in several campaigns and fought for him now. Her testimony won him the right to stay a trooper, but he would have to take medication to control his outbursts. The pill supplies were scheduled for 6-month intervals. Harry lasted 2. But he carried the reputation with him, and no one dared cross his path to test his newfound attitude. Now this interloper had descended into their lives and threatened his reputation. Harry would have to prove a point. It wasn't just a matter of personal pride, but sheer logistics. If this guy got away with it, then another young hotshot would have to try, and another, until you had total anarchy, or an incident reminiscent of the island debacle. Harry was too old to put each rookie in his place. So this one little session with the prisoner ought to do the trick. He held his breath, edging closer. He could make out the shadowed outline of the man shackled to the wall. He could hear the rhythmic breathing of deep sleep. The monitor on the wall confirmed all greens. Harry adjusted the suit strength level to deliver punishment, but no real damage. A broken bone or 2 wouldn't hurt anyone. He drew back his leg, aiming for the stomach to steal precious air before the fight. He reached the arc of his kick. A thought hit him like a blow. He couldn't hear the hum of energy bonds. It was too late to abort. He rocketed the strength level in his suit and let fly. The kick didn't even get the chance to land. A hand grabbed his ankle as it whistled through the darkness, jerked him off balance. The servo mechs in the suit counteracted, holding him up. Harry delivered a series of powerful jabs, roundhouse blows to the form below him. The prisoner shrugged them off, blocking what he could, absorbing what got through as if it were only so much wind. Harry landed a punch to the jaw, drawing blood. He knocked the prisoner's head into the wall. This was the chance he hoped for. He adjusted the strength level to kill 3 inches and jumped on the man. He couldn't hit him. A foot in the solar plexus knocked him across the room. Harry rolled as he landed, coming up in the classic defense posture. The prisoner wasn't in front of him. He turned. Too late. The man lifted him overhead and threw him into a wall. Something cracked. Harry tasted blood. He tried to turn away from the stalking prisoner. The Templar stomped against his upper leg, breaking the suit and the bone beneath. Harry screamed, rage, pain, and fear driving him to madness. He keyed a sequence for a sonic grenade that spit out of one of the suit's portals. He covered his head with his hands. The grenade rolled over to rest at the Templar's feet. It exploded, tossing him across the room. He slammed into the wall, crumpled, blood leaking from his ears. Harry dug in a panel and pulled out his plasma gun. He dragged himself up the wall, rerouting energy to his broken leg. The suit's components groaned, trying to find intact pathways to follow, trying to obey their commands. Pain dampers were injected into his leg. Numbness seized him below the thigh, and he was thankful. But the suit could only do so much, torn as it was. Harry had to drag himself around the room and curse the loss of time. "You bastard," he spat. He almost chanced a shot from this distance, but he wanted to get close, watch the man die. No one had ever done this much damage to him in his career. No one could ever hurt a suit. They were made to withstand an auto-Hulk assault. Yet this prisoner had crushed the defenses and injured the man who relied on them too much. He would pay. The Templar didn't move as Harry approached, dragging his leg, all semblance of subtlety gone. Harry leveled the gun, trying to hold steady his wavering hand. "You're gonna die," he warned him. The prisoner looked at him and smiled. Harry lost a millisecond, but in the end, that made the difference. The Templar threw the remains of the grenade canister at the gun, sending the blast high and to the right, just crinkling the air by the Templar's ear. He leapt, flipping through the air to land at Harry's side, shoulder tossing him across the room after the pistol. Harry lay in a heap, the clarion scream of alarms piercing his damaged skull. Not supposed to shoot guns in detention, he thought disjointedly, and lolled his head to watch the prisoner walk up to him. "I'm not the one dying today," he was saying. Harry tried to laugh, tried to be brave in the face of his doom, but his body wouldn't respond to anything below the neck. "My neck's broke," he thought as he tried to wiggle his toes. "Go on," he said aloud, wanting to die rather than explain this embarrassment. The prisoner raised Harry's own gun. "Die slow," he whispered. "No," said Harry, vision of his life leaking away on the cold steel floor, being found too late by his beloved troops. "Please. Please, don't kill him." Nova stepped through the sliding door, rifle held to her shoulder, followed by a half-platoon of troopers in full suit. The prisoner backed against the wall, gun held at his side. "You said I could trust you." "You can," she said, but knew as the words left her mouth that he wouldn't. Harry's need for retribution had ruined any chance of that. How could she convince the man she meant for it to be better? "We still don't know your name," she said. "Tell me your name." He watched her, but didn't miss the troops lining up against the wall, or the guns leveled at him. He bought time, needing to think, hoping to make a good show of himself in his death. "I'm 12, he said. She shook her head. "Not how long you've been a knight. What do people call you?" 12. "I'm the 12th High Commander." "You're a leader." She edged closer to Harry's crumpled body, motioning the med team to attend him. She noticed the ripped and brutalized jumpsuit and almost lowered her gun. "Did you do this?" She waved toward the suit. "You sent him to attack me while I rested." "No, I mean, did you damage his suit?" The Templar glanced at the torn metal shell. "That's what happens in battle," he explained to her as if she were a child. It was the way most men spoke to her, treating her like a subordinate instead of a seasoned campaigner. She didn't like it. "I know what happens in battle. I wanted to know how you did it. How did you break the suit?" She heard muttering in the ranks behind her, and silently cursed herself for breaking their discipline. They hadn't noticed Harry's suit until she pointed it out. The medics covered him with a mylar blanket and carried him through the line. None of the troops had ever seen a suit damaged before, hardly creased after an encounter with the mob, much less shredded off a trooper's body. Doubt ate away at their confidence as they each wondered what manner of man could do this. Nova felt the tone of the room change, and she knew she had to wrestle control back from this man. She watched him grow as they shrank. 12, she said, pitching her voice to command level. "Drop your weapon. We will take you into custody." He was twice as big as her. "Chain me back up." "Not on your life, sister. Your little boys don't scare me." "Do your best." He was a giant now, almost 9 feet tall and as wide as a door. He crouched like a feral beast, ready to fight, the battle gleam burning in his eyes like a small supernova. Nova felt the men behind her shift closer to the door. The room was too small for a pitched battle with something so big. How did he grow so fast? He was a man, wasn't he? She bit her tongue to control her fear, aimed her gun at his head. "We don't want to hurt you," she said, wishing her voice didn't crack. "Those pop guns don't hurt," he smiled, his canines long and sharp. The tips of his teeth hung over the bottom lip like a demon from their worst nightmares. Muscles bulged under the torn bodysuit. But she recognized the smile. It was a smile of contempt, bestowed on her by every commander and moneymaker that stood in her way of being commander of the troops. She fought off anger, calming herself. Anger was not a good tool to carry to battle. The smile irritated her, breaking the spell he was casting, and suddenly there was the Templar in front of her again, a normal man looking weary and flushed. The man acted on his own. "I am not responsible for the attack on you," she explained, holding her rifle steady. "Put down the gun, and we can discuss this." She hoped her example of calm was affecting the men, but she couldn't afford to take her eyes off the Templar to check on them. "You cannot control your own men?" he countered. She felt something in his voice and realized he was using it against them, pitching his voice to control them, just as she had been trained. "And you ask for my trust," he continued. "Who is to say these pups won't shoot me where I stand after I put this down?" He lifted the gun away from his side. "We'll shoot you if you don't," she warned. He laughed. "But if I put this down, I won't take any of you with me." The troops muttered. She could guess their questions. After all, they had seen Harry, seen the damage. She could almost feel each of them wonder if he could carry out his orders, if this man would carry out his threats, if their thick suits would protect them. Someone ran out of the door, screaming. "Our weapons are set to stun," she said, trying to focus their attention on her, help them stay calm. "We'll take you alive for a trial." "Doesn't matter. I'm a fighter, girl. I tried to trust you, but you broke that. Stun or kill, it won't make a difference on how many of your shells I can crush." He stretched, muscles bulging like steel cords. She felt the troops pressing back into the wall. "Helmets closed," she ordered. "Full body armor, power maximum. Minimize room interference." She could hear the clicks as helmets started to close. "We can't beat him, sir," she heard Robe say before her own faceplate slid shut. The Templar drew down, speed and surprise his ally. It caught the troops unawares, and only the thick protection of their suits saved them. Plasma bolts ripped into their chests, knocking them back into the wall. He leapt among them. They couldn't fire for fear they would hit one of their own. The image Nova had tried to banish was back, reinforced by liquid kicks and fluid blows that dented the suits, knocking systems offline. The Templar was a wisp of smoke, a cloud closing over them, hitting and retreating, knocking down and stomping. Some men lay with broken limbs or broken suits, unable to respond to simple commands. They had been trained by the best, Bram and his team of experts. But hand-to-hand combat had taught them their suits were the answer when all else failed. The suits could be relied upon as a shelter until help arrived, protection from even the most severe punishment. Their entire education was based on the suit. And as their knowledge crumbled, they collapsed as a unit and couldn't recover. Alone, Robe flanked Nova, trying to cover her. She rested the rifle on his shoulder, waiting for the Templar to get clear of the flailing bodies that surrounded him. Even as he demolished her men, she marveled at him, at his strength, at his quiet determination. He didn't waste air, screaming a primitive battle challenge at them this time. He worked methodically, even a bit poetic, she thought, moving from one trooper to the next, no blow wasted, no extra effort expended. And he didn't kill, she noted through her external sensors. He crippled, he knocked into oblivion, he dismantled, but none of the men he worked his way through was dead. He's not killing them, warned Robe, caught between hero worship and loyalty to the squad. This man, without a suit, and even his one weapon drained of energy, walked among the troopers like the specter of death, picking and choosing his victims with a direct randomness based on perceived threat. Robe was awed even more by his restraint. So was Nova. The prisoner had no reason to trust her, no reason for restraint against the men lined up to kill him. Yet time and again, he stayed his hand, pulling short a blow that would break a neck, holding back a kick that would snap a spine. For his part, the Templar wasn't aware of his admirers. He only knew tired. Exhaustion held his hand more than restraint. And the troops seemed endless, even though he had counted 40 as they came into the room. He finished off all but 2, the commander girl and the boy. They were against the far wall, rifles held on him, and he knew he couldn't reach them before they shot him. Surrender wasn't an option. "I've got you," Nova warned. "Give up now, or I will shoot." He coiled and leapt, trying to flip, but clumsy in his spent state. He landed off balance, crouched near a felled soldier. He had to roll and grab for a fresh rifle, cursing the seconds it cost him. Robe watched the man leap like a gazelle, flying halfway across the room, and rolling in the most beautiful configuration he had ever seen, graceful as a ballerina. The rifle seemed to grow from his hands like magic, and he marveled at the crimson beam that sliced through the room and slammed into his chest, knocking his systems offline and pulling him from the world of the conscious. Who has who? He toyed with Nova. They stared at each other over the end of rifle barrels. "I wouldn't believe it if I didn't see it," Bram called from the doorway. A fresh platoon flanked him. "You did all this yourself?" "Shoot him, Bram," Nova ordered, unprepared to watch the Templar take apart any more of her men. "I want to know how he did it," her second countered. "Shoot him now," she ordered. The troops raised their guns. She watched the Templar sigh. "I'm tired," he said, and pounced at them again. Plasma beams ripped the air apart, an almost solid curtain of red. They caught the prisoner midair, turned him around and slammed him to the floor. Beam after beam settled on him, drilling into his skin. He didn't scream. He took aim, slowly, and fired a final shot. The beam hit Nova full on the faceplate, cracking the helmet off her head. She fell to the floor, darkness claiming her. Before she closed her eyes, she saw Bram sprint across the floor, running for her. She saw the Templars still formed not too far from her. She saw how handsome she thought he was. She hoped Bram had used stun. She still wanted to talk to him. 12, she whispered and drifted off. Chapter 14. Bruce hurried down the hall, the throbbing in his injured arm barely matching the headache that pounded in his skull. He could have had the medical computers stitch his arm up and dump a load of painkillers in his blood until he healed. But he chose the cast and accompanying pain as a badge of honor, using every opportunity available to him to tell his side of the story. He had already sold 2 separate articles to the papers, purporting the truth about the new visitor from the past. No matter that the papers were gossip rags, passed around the most bored and least literate circles of society. Their money was just as green as the next person's. He hoped Dr. Darwin hadn't gotten wind of it yet. Bruce still wanted to press him for more information, milk his mind of semi-technical jargon he could sprinkle in the text for added authenticity. Darwin wouldn't approve of the dissemination of information or the manner in which Bruce was choosing to do so. If the old man heard about it, Bruce was off the team and probably out of the academy. "I deserve this," he told himself. After all, the Templar had damaged him, destroyed his lab barehanded, and emotionally scarred the young assistant. He still had images of the giant man striding across the room like a demon from the deepest pits of hell, ripping apart all reason and meaning in his world. He patted his injured arm, adjusted the bandage for the best optical effect, and went into the lab. Darwin was hunched over a detached terminal in the corner, oblivious to the world as usual. His fingers pecked like a machine gun, an advanced three-finger method that could only develop from years of practice. Bruce never understood why the doctor didn't take a computer-based training to teach himself how to type properly, but the old man was set in his ways, and besides, he was faster than most of the five-finger methods in the department. "Doc, you're late. Where have you been?" "Sorry, I had to go by the nurse in." Darwin shut the terminal off and booted the laptop. "I don't want your excuses, I want your time. You're scheduled to be with me during this hour." "Yes, sir." Bruce looked around the room. This lecture took place every 2 weeks or so, just about any time Bruce was late, and Darwin was in a piss-poor mood. He barely caught the last part of the final sentence. It had changed. "We're going to do what?" Darwin lowered a pair of glasses on his nose. "I have to check on him." "The news feed claimed that the troops will convene a trial this afternoon," Darwin continued. "They caught him." Darwin shoved the laptop into a small shoulder pack, stuffed full to overflowing with an accumulation of junk. He had to force the cover closed, and even then it was a struggle. Bruce wondered if he had won. "Where have you been keeping yourself?" Darwin put a sweater on over his lab coat, then a parka on top of that. "They're moving too fast. They can't try him yet," Bruce defended. Only the mob was tried quickly, if they even made it that far, and usually were sentenced and executed on the same day. Other people were given a series of hearings where probabilities were played out in computer simulations, and sentence passed after a lengthy debate. Darwin waved him off. "He's a random factor. They don't have enough information about him. The main terminal cannot simulate an answer. His assault on virtually the entire community is considered mob mentality. They'll kill him. Not if we can give them information. We can stop them." "But he tried to kill us," Bruce started to argue. Even as the doctor went to the defense of the Templar, Bruce's gears were turning. The info Zets would pay huge money for the exclusive on this story. And all trooper trials were behind closed doors. Bruce had an in as the assistant and as a character witness. He could retire on this alone. "I've got a car outside, we can take it," he said. Darwin stopped. "When did you get a car?" Bruce looked at the doctor, his mind racing. "My aunt died, left me some money." "I'm sorry, boy," Darwin clapped him on the shoulder. The expression of sympathy was new. Bruce felt a tinge of guilt. The bond between him and the doctor was the first in their relationship. The guilt gnawed at his stomach, but Bruce was able to ignore it. Mostly. Chapter 15. The energy bonds weren't the problem. The small cramped metal box that bound his torso, exposing his arms and legs spread eagle against the wall, wasn't that bothersome. Even the brace that forced his head back almost 45 degrees didn't worry him. Even before he completely woke up, he knew he could break free from them all. Year after year of training had forced an instinct for self-preservation in him he could neither acknowledge or claim credit for. He was a survivor, a product of his times and environment, and so in tune with his body and the way it interacted with his surroundings that the slightest temperature change from an approaching body let him know he was not alone. He didn't need to look to feel them. He could smell where they were. To the left, behind him, a huddle of 3 men, little more than boys with that post-pubescent scent that whispered of too many solo rendezvous with fantasy women after lights out. Beyond them, 2 others, older, anger stronger than fear wafting toward him. Men who knew how to fight. He marked them for danger and shifted his attention. Across the room from him, the man who he had broken in the car. He was healed now, bruised still but moving as if nothing occurred. The Templar thought to ask, but bit his tongue. His leaders had repeatedly warned him about a curious nature. It would only cause trouble. If he cared to consider it, curiosity was the reason for his being here. 11. His master wanted to skip the tiny village, raid an outlying farm for stock and vegetables instead. But he argued that the village was soft, ripe for the plucking. It was rumored that a repository of ancient weapons and books was housed under a central hut in the center of the commons. Word floated down the river about such a place, a fortress of new design and methods of destruction. 11 held out against him, pointing out the lack of defenses as a reason for this not to be the place. But 12 persisted, and the men sided with him. The chance for plunder and mayhem against such an easy and obvious target was too tempting to pass. 12 led them into battle against the village, and fell against a superior force. The Templars were routed by villagers, trained in ancient ways of battle. Instead of relying on brute force like the soldiers, the villagers used tactics, an outdated concept that had been disregarded in favor of a more direct approach. The advance line of Templars fell into the villagers' meager defense, screaming battle cries as it crumbled and retreated. They pushed through the middle, stretching out their lines. The two flanks of defense closed like an iron claw. 11 fell in the first wave, carrying 3 villagers to the beyond with him. They might have won free, their ragged armor protecting those left, but a hill on the far side of the encampment was too much of an enticement. 12 knew that the villagers had to have something to hide. Why else would they fight with such zeal, such furor? His men agreed. They hacked a path to the hill, wreaking havoc, losing many but killing more. The villagers were fanatical, in an attempt to stop the advance. 12 could taste bittersweet victory. Something slammed them from the side. Women and children poured from the woods to fight beside the village men, sheer numbers crushing the Templar force. The battle was horrendous, pushing up the hill. His brethren fell, left and right, dragged down and ripped to shreds, spent blaster rifles torn from their hands and used as clubs. Even as they died, each Templar would take 2 or 3 villagers with him, ripping out a child's throat, cracking a mother's neck, biting the jugular of a body on top of them with their last strength. Until he was the only one left. At the top of the hill, he didn't have time to look, but he knew the entire troop lay spread up the incline. He knew that the villagers would take him, and he would never know why they fought so hard. It ate him up inside, feeding rage that churned in him. He prepared himself for death, vowing to take as many villagers with him as he could. If they wanted to die for their secret, he would oblige. He threw down his rifle, wiped the gore from his sword, and leapt. Time stretched him, ripping him apart, and piecing him together again, over and over, until agony was the only mantra he knew. So this is hell, he thought. He was spit on a clean gray floor, and the pain stopped. The battle rage didn't. It burned in him, crying for release. The room was unfamiliar and strange. It smelled, felt, and was different. The strangeness added to his dementia, and on the floor across from him was a body. It looked weak, frail, an old man in a white overgarment. I fell through the hill, he thought. I am in the hill, and this is what they are hiding. He crawled for the supine figure. He wasn't sure if this was the hill or where he was. Were the rabid villagers hounding him? Would they crash through the doors and take him? He thought this might be hell, after all. He reached the body, propped it up, and shoved his spent pistol in its mouth. Wake up, bastard, he growled. He hoped he wasn't threatening the devil. He could handle being bound. It would be a moment's work to undo. He could handle being surrounded. It would take just a few moments longer to deal with his captors. He hesitated because the scent of fear and blaster rifles was so strong, He imagined the slightest twitch on his part would start all the men blazing away at him. How could you escape when your head was vapor? He reasoned it better to wait it out. Darren swaggered over and stood above him. Chapter 16. Darwin waited in the corridor, alongside a varied assortment of petitioners. In the corner, a woman with a small boy waited to learn the status of his application to the troops. Beside her was an older gentleman, from the first or second level of society, waiting to hear about his son's patrol in mid-country. They all sat with the same dead, despondent air of people who had better things to do than wait for some undersecretary to admit them to the director. This would never happen with Conrad, Darwin told himself, remembering how the founder of the troops would see each person in a quick, orderly fashion. There was a real soldier and a gentleman. When Darwin came to visit about his application to the troops 40 years ago, Conrad himself took him aside to explain the differences between mechanics and intelligence. He told Darwin he was needed on the front lines of development, not battle. Conrad couched the rejection in such elegant terms, it wasn't painful at all. On the contrary, Darwin felt it was a pleasure to walk out the door and still work for the troops in an R&D lab, never knowing the sting, thrill, or disappointment of war. The new director, Nova Lod, was Conrad's hand-picked protégé. She was a warrior, chafing under the constraints of administration, if you could believe the gossip. By the looks of her waiting room, she didn't know how to run an office, preferring to rely on her undersecretary to weed out everything but the most important matters that required her attention. "Excuse me, Dr. Darwin," Stephen leaned out of the office door. He was tall, broad, and not at all what one would expect in an assistant. "Thank you," Darwin answered. If one must have an assistant, he thought, I suppose one capable of anything would be best. He nudged Bruce awake and allowed him a moment to gather his senses. "We've been called in. Keep still and let me ask the questions." "No problem, Doc," Bruce said. He checked the audio recorder in his jacket once more. He would let the doctor do all the talking, let the director answer all the questions, and recorded every word they said. He would filter it down, write it up, attach a pseudonym, and pay his condo rent for the next 2 years. Stephen waited like a sentinel, neither moving nor even breathing, it seemed. When Darwin and Bruce stood in front of him, he stepped back, allowing them to pass through the door and follow him. Chapter 17. Nova sat with her back to the door, watching the pale reflection in the glass window to her side. The sun was bright against a blue sky, but the protective glaze on the plex steel hid the room in shadows. Small recessed lights in the ceiling created tiny pools of light. More of the room was unseen than seen, except to her. She knew every inch with her eyes closed. She knew it was 15 steps from the door to her desk. She knew that Bram stood in a corner, beside an effigy of an early model jumpsuit, hidden from all eyes but hers. She knew that the footsteps approaching up the corridor belonged to Stephen the Faithful, and he brought Dr. Darwin to see her. She didn't know how to feel about the trial that would take place tomorrow afternoon. On one hand, this new creature held in a cell on level 5 needed to be studied. He was the myth come alive, the model on which the troops were founded. A real-life, 21st-century Templar knight. He fought with the ferocity and strength of an animal, so much so that even their most advanced computer could not extrapolate a hypothesis on his existence. The data was too conflicting, the facts too near fiction as to be believable. Even Bram's advanced intelligence network couldn't fathom his being, and clamored for immediate termination and autopsy. He was an anomaly like the mob, unpredictable and dangerous. But the opportunity for studying the first time traveler in history was too tempting to just discard onto a lab table. Argument had been presented, to set him up in a zoo-like environment, parade him around for society functions, and have it answer questions regarding past and present. Unfortunately, the only prison capable of holding the Templar was a squad of armed guards with plasma guns aimed at his head at all times. His reflexes and strength didn't even register on playback monitors. The computer accorded him a terminology researched for natural disasters and shuffled him into a gig file all by himself. If the main terminal didn't know what to do with him, how could the people decide? Stephen let Darwin in the door without announcing him. Nova felt the breeze from the corridor on her cheek and turned to face them. Darwin looked uncomfortable. He came to see Conrad often, she thought, and watched the old man's gaze on the portrait behind her. The emotions registered on his face were mixed, reverence and disgust. She knew the feeling. Conrad was a charmer. A bastard, and a lowlife too. But a charming one. "Have a seat," she instructed. The assistant with Darwin caught her eye. He was nervous and trying to hide it with cockiness. She had seen that type time and again. Young men going into battle too proud to admit their fear and too stubborn to listen to their betters. Experience was what counted in every situation, and this novice was another anomaly. She marked him, flicking her eyes in Bream's direction, telling him to do the same. He blinked, acknowledged. "Dr. Darwin, a pleasure to see you. I believe this is the first time you've been to the office since I took over." He tore his eyes away from the staring figure on the wall. "After Conrad passed, I turned to my work." She nodded. "Your machine kept him alive a year longer than anyone could have hoped," she shrugged her shoulders. "It was an experiment. You couldn't have known it would finish the process time had started." Darwin wiped a hand across his eyes. "He was a good man. I was sorry to kill him." She laughed, startling Bruce and the doctor. "You didn't kill him. He was old, he lived a good life. He would have died anyway. Is that why you don't come to see me? Do you think I blame you?" "Not at all," he started, but she could see that yes, that was the reason he stayed away all these years. Time to bring him back into the fold, she told herself. "I've been researching new," he started. "I've been busy with," he attempted to explain. "I wish we could have talked about this sooner." She got up, sat on the edge of her desk closer to him. "It's as much my fault as yours. I should have come to you instead of waiting. It never occurred to me that anyone else could hurt as much as me." She looked over her shoulder at Conrad. "We loved him, didn't we?" Darwin sniffled. "But we still need you on the team." "Darwin," she turned back to him. "The troops go on, no matter who we lose, right? And we don't blame each other for any who fall in battle. Conrad was fighting, and you helped him live long enough to pass on instructions to me. He told me the secrets, which he couldn't have done if you hadn't kept him alive. He knew the risks, knew that the machines would keep him alive by eating him up inside. He accepted that. He told you as much, and he told each of the troopers. We accepted that." She reached out for his hand, took it in her own. "Now you have to. Accept his death wasn't your fault, and come back to us. No one blames you, least of all me." Bram smiled, and she almost laughed out loud. Darwin was looking at her with the same look of reverence he had given the portrait. Conrad could always choose well, he patted her leg. She felt good about herself. Compliments always hit her the right way. That, and the fact that the doctor was now entrenched on her side. One of the secrets Conrad had bestowed on her was manipulation. "Place all the pieces to your liking on the board before the game starts," he said. "What else can I do for you, Drive?" She moved back to her chair. The assistant hadn't sat still while they were talking. He fidgeted in his chair, leaning his shoulder first one way, then the other, like he was watching a ping-pong match. Bram noticed too, and ran a tactical scan on the young man. He was clean of weapons. He motioned to Nova, but watched Bruce closely. "I've come about the Templar," said Darwin. She knew as much. Darwin's name had been all over the report Harry Gargan filed. "He goes to trial tomorrow afternoon," she explained. "I know," Darwin answered. "I want to be a character witness." Nova stared at him. "What? How can you be a character witness? You don't know him." "I don't know him, but I know his order and the past." He rummaged in his bag, laid the laptop on her desk, and pulled out the ancient book. "This is about him." Nova's eyes bugged out of her head. "Is that a book?" "A book of history," he told her. She leaned across the desk as he set it in front of her. "This book contains information on the formation of his order and the reasons for its existence. That's the reason for me going, and the fact that I brought him here." Nova stopped him. No one had yet addressed the issue of time travel and its implications. That was another matter for trial. She told him so. "We're going to convene an inquiry into your newly discovered talent. Doctor, I'm not allowed to discuss it with you any further." "I thought as much." He closed the book and hid it back in his pack. "But you must know, I destroyed all the documents on my research. There are no records of what I've done, and I refuse to divulge the methods I used. We've seen the results of pulling a figure from the past into the now, and even though the dead were only mob, they were still people. I'll talk about the trauma of the passage in tomorrow's trial." The assistant cleared his throat. "But the computers caught it all, Doc. You couldn't have destroyed everything." Darwin looked at Bruce, nodded his head like a father to a child. "I sent a virus into the programming. You'll find no records of my activity for that time period." Nova and Bruce both sat stunned. "There are virus hunters that will wipe it out," said Bruce. "You'll crash the entire system," said Nova. Darwin sat with a proud gleam in his eye. "I created a program-specific virus. It only erased the vids of my room and files pertaining to my work for this period. You'll find that no one can recreate my experiment, and therefore cannot commit the same folly I did." Bruce almost giggled aloud. He had recordings of his own, but no one needed to know that. He readjusted the audio recorder and settled back. Nova regained her composure. "If you've created a program-specific virus, we'll need your data on that. Filed with the Register's office. Under my name." She buzzed Stephen. "Command file, Darwin. Find me programs registered under his name." She looked back at Darwin. "As for you being a witness, I see no problem with having you there. I want you to dictate a position to Stephen, so we won't have any surprises. And I want you to come back to R&D for us." Darwin packed the laptop back in his bag. "Thank you for your time." "That's it." Bruce was incredulous. "What about the prisoner?" "What about him?" Nova asked. Bram shifted his weight forward, ready to pounce. "Where is he? What are we going to do? I mean, how is he?" Darwin put a hand on his shoulder. "That will all be for tomorrow, Bruce. Get yourself together. I got what I came for." He looked over his shoulder at Nova and the portrait of Conrad. "And a little more." "But Doc, we what?" "Really, boy, you must collect your thoughts before you open your mouth. You'd make much more sense that way." Chastised, Bruce followed the doctor out of the door. Bram appeared by her side. "Did you feel it?" she asked. "I couldn't tell what it was. Did we reject him at one time? His name isn't familiar, but who knows? Maybe we didn't save someone he knows from the mob. Have a trooper check him out." "I put robe on it," he said. "No, I want him on level 5. Don't mean to question you, but it's a reward, she said. Robe stood between me and the prisoner, ready to lay down his life. So he gets to observe the Templar. It'll season him up. The man shot him. Robe has to deal with that. Hope he doesn't get trigger happy and want revenge. You tell him I said not to. If he wants a chance to shoot back, wait until the trial passes sentence. If it's death, I'll put him on the hit squad. He can shoot him then. Chapter 18. Darren swaggered across the floor and stood in front of the Templar. He scratched self-consciously at the bruises that ran the length of his face and disappeared at the collar of his jumpsuit. "Hey, mister," Darren said, trying to sound innocent. With his head tilted by the energy bond, the Templar couldn't avoid the blow that followed. "Remember me?" "No," the Templar growled. "But I will." The other guards powered up their rifles, taking them off standby. The Templar could smell fear reeking off them all, filling the room with an almost overwhelming stench. Darren swallowed his fear. "You don't scare me," he drew back his hand again. "Stop," a young voice called across the room. Darren held his hand. "Robe, get the hell out of here. I'm trying to interrogate the prisoner." Robe grabbed him by the elbow as he drew back for another hit. "Don't do it again." Darren rounded on the rookie. "Or what?" He shoved Robe against the wall. "You going to stand up for this?" He waved a hand at the Templar. "This thing? Against your own teammate?" Robe wouldn't back down. "You're not going to torture him." "It's an animal, Robe. It doesn't think or feel," he let Robe down. "It's like a shark made to hunt, kill. Nothing else. You can't explain yourself out of this one. You stop, or I'll put you on report to Bram." "Who do you think sent me down here?" Darren shot back. The other guards watched the exchange with interest. Even the Templar seemed focused on the conversation, but while the guards were distracted, he disconnected the power cord leading to the bond on his head, freeing up his neck. Contracting and squeezing his chest, he forced a hairline fracture in the torso constraint. "He didn't send you here to torture," Robe stood firm. He didn't notice the Templar's slight movements. He wouldn't approve that. Darren leaned against the wall. "All right, maybe I'm getting my payback. But you saw what that bastard did to me in the car. Can you blame him?" Robe asked. "We pulled him out of the mob, fighting for his life. Before we knocked him out, he was in battle. What the hell do you think he'd be thinking when he woke up? It was your fault. You should have used more sedative." Darren pushed back in his face. "Don't try to blame this on me. That dose was for any large man. How was I to know Super Guy would have tolerance? That's what you're trained for, isn't it? To think and adapt. Look who's talking, Mr. Intelligence." Robe bristled for a moment, then calmed himself. The other guards could read the mantra on his lips, silently chanting with him, until the tension eased from the air. "Please," Robe said with slow deliberation. "Don't hit him again." "He's free," one of the guards screamed. All guns trained on the Templar. He leaned against the wall, relaxed with his legs crossed underneath him. Both hands were free of the energy bonds and laying in his lap. "Do not shoot me," he whispered. "Don't shoot him," Robe commanded. The room was quiet. All the men wondered what to do about the prisoner that refused to stay shackled and bound. "Get Bram," said Robe. "Shoot him and be done with it," Darren countered. "Shut up, Darren. Go get Bram." "You're not a team leader," he sulked. Robe rounded on him. "No, but I am in line for director. You want to wait to follow my orders until then." All the men came to attention. One man gasped. They all knew Robe was being groomed and taught, but everyone surmised it was for second, taking Bram's place when he assumed command. No one would have guessed Robe was next in line for the ascent. Darren held himself proud, refusing to answer as he walked out of the door. Robe turned to the Templar. "I'm sorry about him," he explained. "Darren holds a grudge." The Templar looked Robe directly in the eye and smiled. "He will get over it. He is a good soldier," he said. He didn't really think so. He thought none of these boys would last a long minute in a real battle. They were soft, undisciplined, and relied too much on their armor. But 11 taught him diplomacy, even if he chose to ignore it on most occasions. And a situation like the one in which he found himself, surrounded by the enemy with plasma rifles aimed at his head, he was willing to adapt. Success by deception. It wasn't his preferred method, but survival was what counted. "May I sit?" Robe asked, motioning to the floor across from the prisoner, but still out of reach. The Templar motioned him down. "Do they really call you 12? Your people, I mean." The Templar shrugged. "What do they call you?" "I'm Robe. I remember you from our previous encounter." "Twice correct." Robe nodded, even though it wasn't a question. "You came in the hover car, and again with the girl," the Templar continued. "Nova Laud," Robe answered. "She is our commander." He motioned to the young men with raised rifles standing around the wall. "We're the troops. You were brave to stand before me. It's my duty." Finally, the Templar thought, a concept I can understand. Duty meant following orders despite question. If these people remembered the basis for duty, then perhaps more common ground could be found and exploited. "The troops are soldiers," he said. "Oh yeah," Robe was eager to open up. So far, no one had been able to talk with the Templar. "We're the elite." The Templar bit back a smile. "Who do you fight?" The skin between his eyebrows furrowed as Robe concentrated. "The mob, mostly. We had some wars in the interior for a while, but that's over now, except for border skirmishes. We sort of act like guardians to people." "Bodyguards?" Robe shook his head. "No, not quite. We protect everyone. But not the mob." "Well, they're not people really. They're the mob. That's who we protect people from." The Templar nodded, acting as if he understood. He noticed several of the guards had relaxed their vigilance, but the rest kept their rifles trained on him. "I fought the mob," he said. "On the street." "Yeah," answered Robe. "We're not sure how you survived that. No one has before." "They were people." "No, they just look like us." "They're mostly animals," Robe started to say. The Templar nodded and looked at the door where Darren disappeared. "Where am I?" he asked Robe. "They haven't told you." "No. I thought they would have explained it to you. You're from the past." "They told me." "Where am I?" He searched for the right words. "Where am I from where I was?" Robe looked at him, concentration etched on his face. "When I was brought here," the Templar said, "I was fighting in a village. The village was on a river in the territories. Where am I now?" Robe nodded, understanding washing over him. "The West Coast," he said. "Dr. Darwin brought you here in a time portal." "Who?" "Darwin. You trashed his lab. Don't you remember?" "No," said the Templar. "Why did you fight so much when you got here?" Robe asked. The Templar studied the young man, weighing his answer. "The battle rage was on me." "You fought before." He waited for Robe to nod. "When I fight, I can think of nothing else. From the beginning of my training, I have been told to win and survive at all costs. When I came here, all I encountered was a different fight. That mob poured through the doors and attacked me. What should my response have been? Maybe I was wrong." He looked at Robe doubtfully. "But I feel I did the right thing, at the proper time. I survived. Robe smiled at the Templar. You shouldn't feel remorse about the mob. They did attack you first. That's all they do. But us, we came to help you. How was I to know? You came on me in battle, dressed in armor. How was I to hear an announcement when the blood rang in my ears and my warrior cry split the night air asunder? Robe leaned forward, feeling like he had a breakthrough. You're right. You didn't know who we were. For all you knew, we were attacking you. That's right, my friend. And again, when I woke in captivity, how was I to know it was for my own good? All I knew was that everyone attacked me since I got here. All I knew was to fight back. The Templar went on, sharing himself with the guards. His hypnotic tones soon had them entranced, weaving a pattern of shared fear and misunderstanding. Soon all the guns were down. It was time to act. But he held himself in check. In this strange land, the young men had reached out to him, lowered their weapons when they felt safe around him. He liked a team, had been part of a group since before he could walk, and although he could function alone, he was by nature a member of a pack. That instinct reared up in him as he planned to kill them all, and he discarded the idea. Honey and vinegar, he thought, and in his mind he heard Eleven's laughing approval. Learn more about your environment before any action. The voice in his head droned out a tactics lesson he was forced to memorize so many years ago in his youth. He could use these troops to learn the lay of the land that was so strange to him, and if needed, he would kill them later. Now, though, they were warming to him. Soldiers sharing a common bond of being soldiers, having faced battles and feeling the same emotions. He let them start talking, spilling their stories of minor engagements that terrified them, and he absorbed it all. They warmed to him, moving close in a semicircle. Guns were still held, but relaxed and at ease. The Templar was happy to note the friendship in their eyes and reverence with which they talked about his capture. He relished their attachment as a plan formulated in his mind. A different plan. Chapter 18. Bram and Darren leaned against the doorframe, listening to the conversation inside. The prisoner was telling a story about his past, a battle at a river that ran red with clay or the blood of villagers. Darren clenched his teeth in rage, but Bram held him back. Wait, he whispered. Learn. The voices inside stopped. Bram's ears picked up the stealthy pad of footsteps approaching the doorway. He pulled his pistol and aimed it head level. The door slid open. Bram jumped back. Robe kneeled on the floor, his pistol drawn and pointed at Bram's groin. The troops laughed, even the prisoner. Bram was not amused. What the hell are you doing? Darren stepped over Robe and pointed his pistol at the Templar. The other troopers were quiet. Robe rolled around, tracking Bram as he came in the room. I got the drop on you, Bram. Where was your mind? In here, the second said. What's going on? Bram kept his back to the wall, his eyes on the Templar. He noted the free limbs and relaxed pose against the far wall. We had it all wrong, Robe explained, rising to stand beside Bram. We've misconstrued the situation, and that's what led to all the fighting, right? He looked to the Templar for confirmation. The Templar was in shock from his travel, and we further aggravated the situation by attacking him. I know, we didn't really attack him. Well, the mob did, but he didn't know who we were. All he knew was that Harry tied him up, and where he comes from, that's what they do right before they kill you. Who untied him? Bram asked. The troops looked at each other. I released myself, answered the Templar. You broke an immobilizer and energy bonds. Darren called from the corner where he crouched, his gun still on the prisoner. The Templar nudged the metal that had been around his torso. This. I cracked it. The energy bonds were hurting me. Why didn't you ask us? Bram questioned him. Would you have let me free? No. As I expected. So I did it myself. And if we decide to immobilize you again? We won't, Robe interrupted. I've carried on a conversation with him, Bram. He won't do any more damage, will you? If you tie me up again, I will get free. You're sure? Asked Bram. We could shoot him again, knock him out. Darren braced his feet. Robe slid in the line of fire as the other troopers watched. You will not shoot him. This is unnecessary. We have been acting civil with one another, and no harm has come of it. I will not allow you to disrupt these proceedings. Everyone in the room stared at Robe. You're ordering around the second? Darren teased. Bram stood with his back to the wall, fingers resting on the handle of his gun, ready. He didn't care if Robe ordered him around or not. He was watching the prisoner. The man was coiled like a spring, muscles so geared up and tense they jumped and twitched in his legs and hands as if they had a mind of their own. How many of us could you kill right now? He called to the prisoner. The Templar smiled, and several guards picked up their discarded guns, holding them at their sides, but close. All but you, the Templar said. And this one in front of me. He nodded at Robe. Him I'd let live because of his kindness. You, because you could get away in time to warn others. Bram smiled back, but it didn't reach his eyes. You couldn't stop me. It would be difficult. I think I could wound you, but I don't know what your communications are like. You may be able to call for reinforcements before I could finish with you. He couldn't get us all, Darren challenged. We're too many. Robe stood firm. He won't get any of us. I've started something here. We are attempting to create a peace between us and learn from him. Don't ruin all that. Set your guns to stun, Bram ordered. 4th level will hurt you but not kill. We used that level to take down rogue mammoths and rhinos, but 1 through 3 didn't faze you in our last encounter. We're not going to do this, screamed Robe. Out of the way, Darren shouted. The hum of the plasma rifles filled the room. Robe stared around at the guards. I won't kill them, the Templar whispered, still leaning against the wall. That's not the point, Robe croaked, betrayal cracking his voice. I want you to feel safe. I made a promise, and I can't keep it. I don't blame you, the Templar put a hand on his shoulder. You've extended your friendship. I promise your safety. And for you, I won't kill any of these. But he wants to show us he can do it, called Bram. He pulled his pistol and adjusted the energy level. He's made to fight, Robe. You have to understand that. And he won't let us put restraints on him. We have to knock him out and shackle him then. Wait, you'll let me do it, he turned to the Templar. I pledge they won't hurt you, not while I'm here. Me either, chimed a second guard, lowering her gun. That's mutiny, screamed Darren. Thanks, said the Templar. Maybe, in a moment. He leapt with a panther's shriek, scaring the troops into a second's hesitation. He landed on 3 of them, knocking heads together and rolling away with a rifle. Stun 4, he shouted as he shot Bram in the leg. He flipped backwards, landing on his knees and hit Darren on the chest plate. Plasma blasts seared the air around him, but he slipped between the bolts, taking his time and neatly knocking each trooper down with careful aim. It was over in seconds. He stalked to the door where Bram had fallen through. Gotcha, Bram breathed, a microsecond warning before he blasted the Templar in the chest. He flew back through the door. Bram called for reinforcements. The Templar sat up and shook his head. Level 4 just itches. Bram, Robe, and the other guard stared in amazement. Bram couldn't hold himself any longer and passed out. How did you do that? Robe asked. They'll be coming now, won't they? The Templar cocked his head to one side. Listening. I can hear their footsteps. Robe tried to hear, but only the echo of emptiness rang back to him. The Templar dropped the rifle and held his hands out to Robe. Better to bind me now, as I promised, or else I'll fight them too. Robe picked up the rifle. I won't let them hurt you, he promised again. I know, the Templar smiled and shared it with the other guard. What do they call you? I'm Pip, she said. I'm glad you and this one didn't fight me. Robe fastened the energy bonds around his wrists, hands in front. Me too, said Pip. You can keep your hands in front, Robe told him. You should be more comfortable that way. Good. The Templar said, against the wall. Robe and Pip joined him, as the reinforcements poured through the door in 2x2 formation. Nova Laud was not long in following. Want to tell me what happened? She asked, surveying the scattered bodies being wheeled to the infirmary. Her second was propped against the wall, waiting his turn. Bram and Darren wanted our prisoner to demonstrate some techniques, Robe answered. Demonstrate? And how did you two not get hurt? We chose not to fight, sir. Was that in violation of a direct order from your second? She asked. I'm not sure it was an order, sir. Explain. I think you should wait for Bram to tell you that. My view was a bit colored. What do you mean? I argued against fighting. I had made peace with the prisoner and was in the process of exchanging information when the fight began. And what started it? I can't say, sir. Can't or won't. The boys stood up for me against those two, the Templar interjected. We were talking peace, and they wanted to know how fast I was. Nova turned her icy glare on the prisoner. Who freed you from your bonds to fight? He had freed himself, sir. It just made sense not to fight him, said Robe. None of this makes sense. I guess I'll have to watch the vid quarters to find out what happened. You're dismissed. Neither Robe nor Pip moved. You can go now, Nova said. If it's all the same to you, we'd like to stay and talk with the prisoner some more, said Robe. She waved them off and posted double guard around the perimeter of the room. But something in the back of her mind nagged at her. Why would Bram pick a fight? Why was the prisoner free to fight? Why was Robe arguing so hard for the prisoner's rights? She hoped her plan wouldn't backfire on her. She didn't want Robe to be afraid, but neither did she want him to champion a lost cause. Robe, see me in my office later. Yes, sir. She would bring him in and talk about his new attachment. That should clear the air. Chapter 19. Webster was sitting in her chair when she walked through the door to her office. Move it, she said, but need not have bothered. He was scrambling away from it, even before she was completely through the door. I was just warming it up. His outfit was different, and his hair was gone, replaced by a close-cropped military cut favored by the troops. The air around him was the same, a scheming salesman. She had read on history discs about a class of citizenry from the far past that held dominion over others called politicians. She was glad she lived in an age when the computer could make every decision about government and logistics of everyday life. When she read about the liars and salesmen who ran countries, it was no wonder to her there had been an economic collapse that ruined the world. Humans were able to pick themselves up from the rubble, wipe away the aftermath of their destructive tendencies. Still, men like Webster seemed to proliferate in any environment. He wasn't a power man himself, but had influences on the Computer Council and held sway with the budget programmers. She didn't like him, but she had to tolerate him. Nice haircut. You like? He stared at his pale reflection in the glass, admiring his trim waist and the tight fit of his fatigues. I'm getting ready for a new phase of my job. Why are you here? I heard about your new toy on the 5th level, and we need to talk about it. I'm handling it, she replied tersely. Webster leaned across the front of the desk. Not what I hear. She didn't like his confidence. It wasn't in his character. Watch your tone with me, she threatened. I'm warning you. I'm warning you, Ms. Laud. I like you. I think you're a fine woman and a decent leader of your organization. But my superiors do not like what they hear. It's all over the vids and net about this new guy. No one knows where he came from. No one knows who he is. He's not trained by anyone we know. Yet his picture is plastered on every monitor in the city. They're studying his combat moves in dojos trying to imitate him. I've even got an email from a toy company wanting to put out a line of dolls based on him. Now you tell me, who is he? We don't know. Exactly. Yet. But we're working on it. Doesn't matter. Kill him. Nova did a double take. You just wanted to know who he is. Sure, the money men would like to know all about him. As a matter of fact, they want to incorporate some of him into the suits and troops. But they also want him dead. Webster sat back in a chair across from her. Before now, everyone studied troop fighting. Everyone bought troop toys. We were the hottest thing going, the most marketable thing in any consumer's mind. She glared at him. Then why were they going to cut our funding? Webster shrugged. Chapter 20. Everybody loves a comeback. You and the bodyguards would be phased out, still do your work out of charity and good heart, and popular opinion would demand you back in. The public relations on this would be out of this world. You can't play with us like that. I didn't come up with the idea. Blame the main terminal. I'm just a peon following orders. And you better follow one of your own. Kill the prisoner. Put it on the vids. Show him as a threat to the world as we know it. I'll get a biographer to put out his story. He was a trooper that didn't follow the prescribed path, a rogue agent from a border patrol in the interior. She held up a copy of an info zet with Bruce's byline in it. The assistant already told the story. Webster waved it off. Him. He's a second-rate hack. We'll paint him up as a pathological liar selling his grandma for beer money. Who are they going to believe? A second-rate student or the commander of the troops? Nova leaned back in her chair. She wanted to turn around, stare at the picture of Conrad for support and encouragement, but she didn't want to turn her back on Webster. When do they want him dead? She asked. The sooner the better. I want all this to go in motion, ASAP. Tomorrow night. He got up to leave. She sighed, massaged the side of her head. Fine, she said. He stopped at the door. About that ordeal next week, have you picked out a dress yet? Chapter 21. Robe sat on the corner of his bed, in the darkness of his room. Someone was trying to access his quarters without permission. He slowly slid a plas gun from the holster on his hip and pointed it at the door. A shadowy figure quickly slipped through the entryway and shut off the light from the hall. Robe silently cursed himself for looking at the light. Now he couldn't make out anything in the darkness. I've got my suit on. Infrared shows you're awake. The voice was half teasing and menacing. Robe lowered his pistol. Pip, what the hell are you doing here? She unfastened her helmet and dropped it in a chair. She crawled over the single berth to sit beside him. Rumors going crazy on what went down between you and the commander. I came to make sure you were all right. He leaned against her. I've been reprimanded, put on probation. They may even take me off track. Bram says they groom 2 or 3 successors at a time, and I've blown my ride. Pip put her arm around his shoulder, cradling him to the lukewarm breastplate that covered her chest. Don't listen to him. That's a classic scare tactic, like the one the prisoner used on all of us. I rescanned the vids into my suit. He wasn't really big and scary, but I remember him that way. I hope the computer can analyze that. It'd be a neat trick to have. Robe sighed. What is it about him? You think he hypnotized me into wanting to be on his side? You tell me. No, you tell me. You felt it too. Everyone in the room felt it, except Darren, and he's so full of hate toward the guy right now. We all knew the Templar was opening up to us. He was on our side, ready to listen. It's like all the diplomacy classes we took were actually working. A small group of us sitting down with the enemy and discovering he's just like us. Tell me you didn't feel that. I felt it, she answered. So did Baker and Tommy and Jew. We were there with you. The vids caught it. The commander will look over them, and they'll reinstate you. He rolled away from her to face the wall. I don't care about that. She lay across the bed, pulling him down beside her, until they curled together in the fetal position. You don't want to be commander. With me as your second. She told me they're going to kill him. Pip pulled away from him, sat up. They can't do that. You saw how he was talking to us. We reached him. Robe sat up beside her. He grabbed her hands and held them in his lap. Now you see. What can I do? What can we do? I reached out to him. He trusts me. We were on the path, and now the stupid computer says he's a random factor and has to be destroyed. We'll enter new data, she argued. We'll get the computer to change its mind. He motioned to the muted, glowing screen on the corner of his desk. I've been at it all night. Access denied on all files. The main terminal refuses to take any more information on him. Decision final. That's not right. We don't kill people. Not for just any old reason. We have to. She looked at Robe for reassurance. We can't do this. We can't just sit around and wait. He ran a finger under her chin. Don't you think I know that? She jumped up, scooped her helmet off the chair. I've got an idea. We'll bust him out. Robe stood up, held her by the shoulders. I've thought of that too. I don't know if we're ready to take the chance. They're going to do it in a few hours, and we don't have time to plan anything. I think I know something. She handed him a disk from a panel on her suit. Run this program off the mainframe, on a subdirectory. Don't save or alter it. Just study the schematics. What is it? He popped the disk into the disk drive on his desk. It's this building. We'll get him into the utility tunnels. They run on every floor. It'll be easy to get him out from there. Robe laughed. Yeah, but how do we get him into the tunnels? She flashed him a smile before sealing her helmet. Some commander you are, you worry too much. She pressed his nose against the faceplate on her helmet. No wonder the second has so much power. We can do this without getting caught. I'm going to get Jew and Baker to help. I'll be back here in 30 minutes. You just be ready to go. Go what? You know what? She shoved him playfully on the bed. We're breaking him out. That's the right thing to do. After that, we'll get him clear and go back to our lives. He stood up, stopped her from leaving. And if we get caught? She shook him off and moved for the door, sure-footed in the darkness. We won't be coming back here. She slipped through the door as quietly as she came in, locking it behind her. Robe sat on the edge of his bed and thought about what she said. He almost went after her, to tell her to forget the whole thing, that this one man wasn't worth it. But something inside him told him that it was. This one man had connected with the small group, and Robe had pledged his safety. Pride was one thing, justice another. He would save the prisoner on principle, because that's what his heart told him to do. If he was caught, he was ready to accept the consequences. That's what being a leader is all about, he said to the computer, as he booted up the disk Pip had left. Doing an action, and prepared to accept the results. He studied the blueprints on the screen in the darkness, searching for a flaw, a pathway, or both. Chapter 22. Darwin sat outside of the judgment hall, rocking his left foot back and forth in impatience. He had arrived early, hoping to catch a moment with the Templar before he was carried through the corridor. Not a chance. A tight press of bodies surrounded the prisoner, blocking him from access. The massive group shuffled forward, the Templar in the very center of the press. 5 rifles held by different troopers were held against his head. 4 other had pistols jabbed into his neck. The Templar had to trust the crowd to lead him, because one trooper shoved a pistol barrel in each eye. But he held himself tall, refusing to even give the slightest hint of weakness. Templar! Darwin yelled, and all eyes in the hall turned to him. He tried to push through, but the people wouldn't part and the prisoner was hauled through the doors. Darwin fought past them, sliding between the bodies, sucking in his stomach to squeeze closer. The doors slid shut in his face. He leaned his head against the cool metal, tired. A hand grabbed him by the shoulder, spun him around. "Excuse me, are you Dr. Darwin?" A young, fresh-faced trooper stood in front of him, impressive in his spit-shined jumpsuit. "I have permission to be here," Darwin stated, reaching for his credentials. "Yes, sir." "I'm not here for that." The trooper looked around at the other guards in the foyer. "May I have a moment?" The crowd pressing around the door had cleared out some, waiting now for the trial to be over. The guards were relaxed, if vigilant in the 4 corners of the room. "What's this about?" "My name is Robe. I'm a friend of the Templar." Darwin's eyebrows shot up, skepticism evident in the way he held himself. "We spent the whole night talking," Robe ignored the attitude. "My commander came down 3 times to check on us. She ordered me to leave. That's when I knew. This whole thing today, it's a kangaroo court. A fiasco." Darwin hid his shock in a knowing nod. He had suspected as much. He looked around for Bruce to give him an "I told you so." "How do you know?" he asked Robe instead. "I don't know. But I have reason to believe they will execute the Templar. The troops have a big fundraiser next week, and his appearance and attack has put us in a bad light. Our advisors are afraid that anything less than his death will make us look weak. At least, that's the word going around." Robe cast about, watching both ends of the corridor. Pip stepped through the far doorway and nodded, the signal for all clear. "I found you, Doctor, because I'm going to ask for your help. If you won't help, then I'm asking for your silence." Darwin smiled, quickly piecing together a hypothesis in his mind. He was a troubleshooting genius, and problems of this magnitude fairly set his brain on fire. There was only one way the young man could go. "You're going to set him free." Robe nodded. "But how can you trust me? You were the one who brought him here. You wanted to study him, right? And you checked on him after we brought him in. I assumed you cared about his welfare. Was I right?" Darwin now smiled at the boy. "You were. And how do you propose we free him?" Pip motioned with her hand, and scuttled through the crowd to stand beside Robe. "Third squad," she said, and kept walking. Robe leaned close to Darwin. "Will you help us?" He started walking away. "When?" "I'm not sure," Robe whispered over his shoulder. "But you'll know." Darwin watched them round the corner, one at a time, nodding to the guard who watched the crowd. Third squad filed into the hallway, and positioned themselves in front of the doorway, gently pushing Darwin back to a chair by the wall. He sat down, leaned back, and wondered how he was going to help. Chapter 23. An impressive array of computer banks filled the wall from floor to ceiling, lights flashing in a hypnotic, bizarre pattern unknown to all in attendance. The Templar was hauled into the room and deposited in a shallow depression in the middle of the bare steel floor. He was surrounded by troopers in jumpsuits, spread an arm length apart against the wall. Each trooper held a rifle trained on him. Nova Laud, wearing a special gold suit, walked in a door hidden flush with the far wall, followed by Bram in a jet black suit. The Templar appeared relaxed on the floor. "All this for one man?" he asked, smiling. "You've proven yourself worth it," she answered. "Glad to see you're healing." The Templar turned to Bram. "You're going to die," Bram spoke through clenched teeth. His fingers traced the butt of the pistol strapped to a panel on his thigh. "You shouldn't make a wager when you don't know the game," the Templar advised, lacing the fingers of both hands behind his head. "Is that some Templar mumbo-jumbo?" "Common knowledge," he shot back. "Do you touch the bug, you don't know. We're going to crush you like a bug." "Really?" "He's right," said Nova, moving to stand opposite of the Templar and Bram. She faced the computer banks. "Our benefactors can't afford to have you around," she said without looking at him. "You take away too much from our image, you endanger our financing, and that's our existence. I won't have my troops disbanded for a single anomaly, no matter how intrigued I may be." "I'm not afraid." "I didn't think you would be," she smiled, trying to hide it from him. "You should be," said Bram from his other side. The computer's normal hum and clicks went up a level. A collective sigh was released as it spit out page after page of information onto a collection tray. The Templar wanted to ask what was going on. What was this thing he stood in front of? But he held his silence, maintaining the facade. Questions, no matter the basis in general curiosity, would be seen as a weakness, and he couldn't afford that. Death did not scare him, but neither did he desire it. His blood burned to fight, to break free, and the battle rage boiled just below the surface. He suspected they would kill him. He knew that this court was a gesture, a throwback to some time when justice really may have been served. But now, he would spend 5 minutes waiting for a pronouncement, preparing himself for when they would choose to move. They would take his life, but the price paid, he swore to himself, would be tenfold. Nova moved to the sorting bin, knowing full well what the judgment would be. Webster had made it plain that the money didn't like the way it made the troopers look to keep getting beat by one man, impervious as he was to all their methods. Better to kill him in front of the vid screens, record it for playback over and over to prove the superiority of the troops and their jumpsuits. The room was quiet as she read the verdict to herself. "You move your lips when you read," the Templar called out. She felt herself blush. It was the voice of a classroom bully some 30 years ago, breaking past barriers so old and buried so deep she forgot they had been erected. One of the troopers ranged along the wall giggled, setting off a small series of snickers and guffaws. "He knows," she thought, trying to see past the glamour he was throwing, wondering if it was conscious of not. "He knows we're going to kill him, and he's trying to beat it." "All men, ready your arms," she ordered. She held the paper up and read aloud. "A series of equations regarding your existence has been fed to the master terminal in an attempt to determine what role you would play in our future. We entered in all the available information on your actions and what we knew of your past, all the vids on your interaction with us in battle and conversations. It has been determined that you are a threat, and no matter what promises you may make, you will remain a threat to our way of life. You represent a parasite that will feed off of our peaceful society and bring about actions that we will regret. Therefore, it is the decision of all parties involved that your existence be terminated to end any threat you may pose. She looked around the room. The motion has been raised by the main terminal. I put it on the floor before you. I second, Bram said. How find you? In one voice, the troops shouted. We agree. And the sentence death. It is merciful, the room echoed with their yell. She held the paper up again. The sentence to be carried out, she faltered. This can't be right. She looked at Bram. It says, immediately. We never carry out immediately. Bram shrugged. The computer whined and spit out another sheet of paper. She picked it up. Ready your weapons, she called, a hitch in her voice. Bram stepped away from the trooper, drawing his pistol. This is yours, he snarled. On my go, Nova said. The troops clicked the power cells on their rifles, the draining whine louder than the computer. The Templar crouched, turning one way, then the other, searching for an avenue of escape or an advantage to fight. He couldn't be taken on the floor, killed like some animal. But the commander and her second were across the room, and every gun was trained on him, ready to take him down. Better to die in the air, he thought. A crimson jet sliced through the steel floor in front of him. It arced in a tight circle around him. Before he could fly, he fell through the floor. Fire, he heard Nova yell. The blasts bounced against the ceiling above him. In the darkness, something grabbed his arm. He turned on it, shoving it into the wall, ready to kill. Templar, choked Robe. He dropped his fist. Come on, Robe recovered and dragged him through the darkness. It took a moment for his eyes to adjust to the darkness, and then he followed with ease. Behind him, he could hear bodies drop into the tunnel. They're behind us, he announced. Give me a gun. I can fight them here. Robe kept moving. This is a rescue, not a battle. I'm getting you out of here. The Templar followed him into the darkness. Continue the adventure in Eon, the Future Templar.